Good afternoon, everyone. We will proceed with our Board of Police Commission meeting today. Welcome to Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council Chambers. I'm glad we have had this opportunity to have you here today. Thank you to everyone who has been able to attend, certainly the public for coming out this evening. Some of you may have noticed that we'll be live streaming tonight. This meeting, the video will be uploaded to HRM's YouTube account and will be accessible to the public. The stream will be a static live shot, not as traditional as, the camera moving to capture you. And PowerPoints may be used and may be hard to see from the YouTube, but they will be posted to halifax.ca tomorrow by the Board of Police Commissioners agenda page. We're excited to live stream tonight. We may or may not get it perfect, as technology sometimes does, but we're always open to improving our processes, and this is what we have this evening. So I'll call the meeting to order and do an acknowledgement that is important to us. Mi'kmaq land acknowledgement. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaty signed in this territory and recognizes that we're all treaty people. So with that, we are going to deal with the approval of the order of business and approval of deletions. I would like to take the time to add that we have we need a motion for a quick in-camera HR matter that we would like to be able to deal with very quickly at the beginning of this meeting so that we can come back and move forward with the presentations that we want to take our time to get through. So if there is, so we'll have that one. Are there any other additions or deletions? We'll move that one in a second. So perhaps someone can put that motion on the floor. So moved by Commissioner Blackburn. A second. Thank you, Commissioner Smith. All in favor? Those opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Call for declaration of conflict of interest. Seeing none. So we're at this stage, we're going to get a brief financial review of Halifax District Royal Canadian Mounted Police resource request. This is just to summarize and remind us of some of the finer details of the last. Oh yeah, that's right. We're going to go into camera. That's what I just said. Sorry. All right. Let's. Ian, what do we need now to do in camera? We need a motion to go in camera. Sorry. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Blackburn. Second, we need. Thank you, Commissioner Smith. So we'll now go into in camera, and we've arranged for another room for the commissioners and support staff and whoever needs to be in with us to do that. Thank you. So we will be back. I can assure you that the municipal clerk, Ian McLean, will do a little brief summary on his football career and maybe some calisthenics to get you all warmed up and limbered up for some good Thank you for your patience. Now we will return to our original agenda. We'll need a motion for the in-camera deliberation. I think, Andrew, you're putting something together?
Yes, Chair Kent. The wording of the ratification motion would be that the Board of Police Commissioners adopt the direction provided in camera in private during their January 16th, 2023 meeting.
Thank you. We have a mover and seconder. Moved by Commissioner Blackburn, seconded by Commissioner Lynn Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? I don't think there's anybody else. Motion carried. Okay, now we will have a brief review of Halifax RCMP. And Commissioner Christie, floor is yours. Chief Superintendent, I should say. I think I called you Commissioner.
Good day, folks. Just a bit of a sound check here. With me this evening, Inspector Michael Flynn,
Can you just pull that towards you, that mic a little?
this way.
There we go. And maybe tip it up, tip the little tip up. There we go.
Testing. Is that better?
That's a little better.
Speak up. Okay. Good evening, Chair. Through you to the board and guests here this evening. Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Christie. I'm the officer in charge, newly appointed of Halifax District RCMP. And it's an honor to be with you here this evening. And also so many other first responders and members of the Halifax Regional Police. Good evening. With me, Chair, through you to the board, is Inspector Michael O'Flynn, the Management and Administration Officer of Halifax District. And we'll turn the presentation over to him.
Thank you, sir. And Chair, if I may, through you to the board. We have some guests with us with the RCMP tonight. Mr. Stephen Ong, Michelle Matthews, and Danielle Desjardins with Department of Justice in the room with us here tonight. I heed your words of a brief overview of the RCMP presentation, and this is fairly following on our last Wednesday presentation to the Board of Police Commissioners, so I'll try to be brief and move through this. Just a quick overview of our organizational chart for the folks in the room. We have the officer in charge of Halifax District, Chief Superintendent Christie, who oversees our financial stewardship in consultation with the municipality and RCMP and Nova Scotia Financial Management. Underneath that, we have our East Operations Inspector overseeing outlying detachment locations such as Preston, Community Policing, Courts and Records. Beside that, we have our West Operations Inspector overseeing all four watches, our traffic and admin to our big three locations. We have our Criminal Investigation Division, which is a unified command led by a superintendent from Halifax Regional Police Service. And the Management and Administration Services, which is myself, overseeing 33 and a half public service employees supporting our frontline operations with records, finance, exhibits, telephone reporting, and other administrative duties. A little more about us. The RCMP service delivery landmass area in Halifax Regional Municipality, 95% of the municipality's landmass, a little over 5,200 square kilometers. Population directly served is in excess of 188,864, or 43% of the population. We respond to annually 52,000, a little over 52,000 calls for service. We've seen a population increase of 11% in our policing areas since the 2016 census. And our calls for service over the 4-year average have been trending slightly over that 52,000 number. Annually in 2022, we processed 1,272 criminal code charges, 1,142 speeding violations, 572 impaired drivers, 1,056 mental health occurrences. Of interest is all of these events are up over the 2011 numbers. As a result of our crime reduction focus, our theft from motor vehicles has reduced from 311 to 239, and our break and enter investigations are down to 223 over the previous year. We have a focus on providing excellent service to the people of Halifax Regional Municipality. One of our exciting things is our ComStat process that shows prioritization and analysis to ensure resource deployment is intelligent, SLED, and strategic. Our focus is on identifying places, problems, patterns, and people that are committing crimes that are impacting our communities. This involves a monthly working group with each of our sections and community partners, including Corrections Canada and our local probation. Our Operation Breach has been a successful program where persons on release or custody conditions are checked on to ensure compliance with those conditions. And our focus there is on the highest risk offenders for recidivist criminal behavior, those most affecting our community. Investing in our people, we have over 3,069 hours of training year to date of our membership. And we are a body-worn camera pilot project site for Nova Scotia. Working with our communities, we held our first Councillor ComStat session in November 2022, which was attended by many participants here from the board and councillors from the community. It was a better of a half-day session that was very well received and something that we've been asked to continue in the future. In August of 2022, Halifax Regional Municipality hosted the World Sailing Championships out in St. Margaret Bay. This really put the spotlight on Halifax Regional Municipality, and it was something we worked hard on. With over 400 participants from 35 countries, the 6-day international event showcased Halifax Regional Municipality and St. Margaret's Bay to the world. This took months of planning by our team, working with organizers and HRM to ensure safety of all participants, spectators, and local residents. Halifax District RCMP had resources on both the land and water throughout. Some current and planned initiatives that we're working on is our community survey and the Halifax District Vision 2025. This is where we are looking at what Halifax District RCMP needs to look like and the services that residents need to ensure community safety and crime prevention into the future. We're working on our communication strategy, engaging more with our strategic communications unit. We're investing in technology through in-car digital video camera systems, and we'll continue our Councillor ComStat session into 2023. Focusing on our people, we have the African Canadian Experience, which was created here in Nova Scotia and has been requested by and presented to some Nova Scotia municipal police forces, with more planned in February 2023, including a partnership with DOJ. We had the Indigenous History Blanket exercise held at H Division headquarters in October, which included DOJ and the Deputy Mayor of HRM. Committed to our people with a healthy and safe workplace. We have our occupational stress injuries and first responders are a fact. With a trauma-informed leadership approach and wraparound support for our officers and their families, we continue to ensure and strive towards having a healthy and well workforce. This includes our peer-to-peer program and 24/7 employee assistance program. We recently held a fitness challenge promoting physical wellness as well as our total overall mental wellness. With our people, we include to be engaged and offer training. As I mentioned, over 3,000 hours of training. We offer also professional development, required mandatory recertifications, or specialized skill courses like breathalyzer technician, interviewing through our own training center, or courses supported for attendance at public institutions. We maintain our training center here in Dartmouth. Our FTE count, or full-time employee equivalent count, in Halifax District RCMP is 184. This has been static since 2019. We've had 6 resources added to our base since 2012, which is a 3.85% increase to resources, despite a population growth of over 11%. Our current population to police officer ratio is 1,026. By comparators, some communities with similar populations, Abbotsford Police Department has a population to police officer ratio of 1 to 642. And the Barrier Police Service has a population to police officer ratio of 1 to 628. As we're all aware, Halifax Regional Municipality has been experiencing unprecedented population growth. The RCMP jurisdiction is experiencing new residential and commercial growth at an increasing rate, raising pressure on all of our resources. As mentioned, we had just over 11% population growth in the RCMP jurisdiction, and we do cover that 5,202 square kilometers of the municipality. It's a large landmass equivalent to approximately PEI. Some pressures that we're facing are mental health and social issues. Pressures on police are more complex and resource-driven than ever before, often due to underlying community and societal problems. These require multiple partners to address and increase training by all of our police officers. Our mental health calls have risen 70% between 2014 and 2019, with that trend continuing. Mental health calls place significant pressure on existing frontline resources through crisis intervention and de-escalation, often requiring multiple member attendance. There is mobile mental health team resources available in Halifax, though they're not often available to our outlying areas for our detachments. With a lack of alternative for the public when experiencing mental health crises, the police become the fallback resource on those nights, weekends, outside of those 8 to 4 hours. Our second largest pressure is road safety. We've heard this throughout from our councillor meetings in the Halifax Regional Municipality. With over 5,700 calls for service related to driving offenses in 2021, driving complaints are our #1 highest call volume. Impaired driving, distracted driving, aggressive driving are the top 3 causal factors of serious injury and fatal collisions. These collision investigations consume a large amount of time, as one would expect when a person does not get home to their family. I've seen the devastation of fatal collisions. Road safety is critical to a safe community. Our October 22 town hall meetings with councillors, as I mentioned, this was made clear to us as a public priority. With new and upgraded 100 series highways in Halifax RCMP jurisdiction, this impacts traffic flow, volumes, and vehicle conflicts. What's important about the 100 series highways is they feed into our communities. They are provincial highways, but the traffic on those roads are entering your communities. Impaired drivers, distracted drivers, aggressive drivers, all those things are impacting your neighborhoods, our neighborhoods. The Nova Scotia 107 extension, the Sackville-Burnside-Bedford connector, is going to have a significant impact in our area. It is another 100 series highway, and there are currently 40,000 vehicles travel the Bedford bypass and Magazine Hills daily. As we look forward to next year, our ask is this. In 2023-24, we're asking for 4 resources. 2024-25, 6 resources. And 2025-2026, 6 resources. These would be additional frontline uniform resources to address these issues in our communities. The risk involved with not increasing our resources and remaining static as we have is our increased response times due to our urban and rural geography, such as Tantallon, Sackville, out to the Eastern Shore. Our road safety driving complaints will have a reduced ability to respond on those complaints and to investigate those serious injury and fatal collisions. I have limited time for our self-generated work, which is critical to changing behavior in our communities. I have a reduced ability to complete our community or zone patrols to have that face-to-face public engagement. Our ability is reduced to address complex and diverse social policing needs that involve every stakeholder at the table. Our employee wellness is affected from the call load. This is something we are very attuned to and hope to address with our mental and physical well-being of all employees. I'll pass over to Chief Superintendent Christie to carry on a little further for you and then take any questions.
Thank you, Mike. Good evening, Chair, through you to the board and other colleagues in the audience. So the interesting thing about the RCMP contract is it has some distinct characteristics where the contract is held between the Halifax Regional Municipality and the Department of Justice. We, in terms of policing, are an operational manifestation of that contract, but the contract and costing is first and foremost a function of the relationship, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute in terms of what that looks like in a practical sense. But the contract is also grounded in a document called the Provincial Police Services Agreement or the Territorial Police Services Agreement, which has a signature of Canada, the different provinces and territories, and is available to key stakeholders such as the police board. Next slide, or Mike, do I hit the button? Thank you. So the nature of the contract between the Department of Justice and the Halifax Regional Municipality, realizing operational police service delivery is sort of an all-inclusive package, is probably the best way to think of it. Currently, the contract sees a reduction in costing of approximately 30%, and that's referred to as a federal contribution. Basically, the province or municipality picks up the remaining 70%. Essentially, though, it's an all-in cost, very much in terms of an inclusive package. So with that comes our access to the emergency response team here in Nova Scotia, comes with access to patrol vessels, comes with access to command posts, comes with access to tech crime teams, national training programs, specialized training such as construction, reconstructionists for fatal motor vehicle accidents, and support services. In fact, the Atlantic Province's cost share helicopter in terms of providing safety and support. So the nature of the inclusive type relationship is reflective of that all-in approach. Mike, is it this one here? So if you imagine that you took the total cost of operating, and this will be sort of an oversimplification, but if you took the total cost of having a building, having a piece of a police car, having a piece of the computer, having a piece of the operational overtime that's necessary, having a piece of the relocation costs. If you think of taking all those costs, you get down to an estimate for this year of $179,052. Now, these costs are always changing. These costs may have to do with collective bargaining. They may have to do with increasing costs to do with fleet, in case the cost of cars, et cetera, go up. So at the current time, this is a current projection or estimation developed by our planning team, reflective of the current cost, which is approximately $179,052 per RM. So essentially, if the ask is for 4 police officers for the coming fiscal year, it's essentially $716,208. However, the final cost can change over time based on different factors that are occurring across the country. We're very privileged and honored to be part of the Halifax Integrated Policing Model, but we are a shared service delivery across many parts of Canada. And that has certain benefits in terms of exchange of information, redeployment of officers for high-risk events that can happen, and so on and so forth. But it does mean that there is this overarching costing approach, which may be different than in some other police departments. So again, for the purpose of discussion this evening, what we've done up is essentially a table reflecting that the request for the coming up fiscal year and in the for the following year is basically 4 members at an estimate of 716,000. The following year, of course, would be 6 regular members is the request of HRM for consideration, which would be approximately $1,074,32. But again, those numbers may need to be adjusted over time. If there are any specific questions, my colleagues from the Department of Justice are here and would be welcome to answer any specific questions depending on the nature of that question. But it's a great honor to present and represent the 230 employees of HRM that are out providing public safety. Those are men and women working at all hours of the evening. And we would respectfully suggest and ask for the support of the police board in furthering the request into council, and certainly respect each segment of the process is an independent one. So thank you for your time, and thank you very much for the service of those wearing the RCMP uniform and first responders here in the room.
Thank you very much, Chief. Are there any questions of the board this time? Commissioner Critchley? Commissioner Smith?
Thank you so much, Chief Superintendent Christie. And I appreciate as well that, this presentation is a presentation as well that was given in large part last week. I'm actually, just given the large number of members of the public that are here, I'm going to ask a question that I asked last week. So I'm hoping that, again, this relates to the time scale for the ask. So the request is placed on a 3-year time scale with 4 officers requested for next fiscal year, and then 6 additional officers requested for the 2 fiscal years after that. And by my own count, in the next year, so later in January, the new public safety strategy will be ratified. I understand that a major pillar of that, based on the presentation we received last week, is around civilian mental health crisis response. That's a priority area. We'll have the policing transformation study completed by the Bill Moore and the folks from PricewaterhouseCoopers and Public Safety Office, being released later this month. I understand the Mass Casualty Commission report will be released in March of this year. Obviously, a very wide sweeping document, going to make a very large number of recommendations relating to the operation and structure of policing in the province of Nova Scotia. The Traffic Safety Act, permitting red light cameras and speed cameras, likely to be proclaimed in the next year to year and a half. And the Involuntary Psychiatric Treatment Act, currently under review as well, particularly as it relates to this issue, highlighted, I believe, in your larger document with regard to police staying in hospital with individuals before they're assessed. So my question is, in light of the kind of very large number of reports and legislative changes that are, I don't want to say impending, but on a near time scale, so January and March for the public safety policing transformation studies, March for the Mass Casualty Commission report, perhaps later in the year or early into the following year for those legislative changes. Why at this time is a 3-year budget proposal appropriate as opposed to, say, a 1-year budget proposal? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, through you to Commissioner Critchley. I think those are very good questions. I think there's also very good answers for that type of question. If you think of the functional importance of the role of myself as the Chief Superintendent of Halifax Regional, it's to ensure that there's adequate and effective policing for the 185,000 people that we co-share the responsibility to police, along with the other sort of aggregate 400,000 HRM. And so every business cycle, just like the multi-year financial plan, have moments of time where we can enter that process and submit for the rigorous debate and oversight and scrutiny, just like we're having now, through proper business process. So my first point would be, we are advancing the request for the consideration of this group and council and other stakeholders, because it's the right timing in terms of the calendar year. And And linking that back to sort of an earlier discussion, if we look back to the injection of full-time equivalents or regular members or staff, the fact is it's a very small number over the last decade. And so there's been a growth of population. There's an expectation of service delivery that when somebody calls the Royal Canadian Mounted Police or any first responder agency, there will be a timely response. Taking into that account, the third nature of your sort of tie-in is to mental health or emotionally disturbed type calls. And I will say, Commissioner, they are extremely high risk. They are extremely high risk. All first responders will have experiences where dealing with somebody for the third or fourth time, something escalates. It's not felt to escalate, but it can escalate. So I am certainly with you. I'm looking forward to working with the strategy that the HRM is developing. I meet with the doctor that presented last week. I think I meet with her next week. But again, in terms of proactive capacity and the vastness of the Halifax RCMP footprint from Sheet Harbor and Musquodoboit all the way out to Tantallon and all points in between. There's also a responsibility for us to bring forward, how do we make sure we have sufficient capacity to meet those needs? And the initial 4, if you think many folks in the audience may be aware, we run a 4-watch system. And these first 4 would be destined for the watches to directly augment and be there in the middle of the night or during the day, depending on what those watches are. Certainly to your final point, which is hopefully the reduction or maybe reallocation of mental health calls away from the policing, we certainly hope to see that too. But I would respectfully say to yourself and to all stakeholders, that's a matter of time to be developed, to be built, to be implemented, and then to determine and see what the impact is. So all fair points, and that's why we come before you respectfully for consideration.
Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chief, again for the presentation. So three quick questions. So I asked this last meeting related to the COP to population numbers, which the data that you provided is 1,026 related to RCMP POP to COP. And the question that we had at the meeting was what would change with the new positions asked, and that number we received was 944, which is still pretty far off from the national average, national averages, which is around 600. So I'm just wondering, as you come to council, is it possible, because you are a national force and you might be able to access that data related to some of the impacts and increases of calls and all the things that you mentioned of why the new officers would be needed. I'm wondering if that information could be provided in council of maybe municipalities that are similar size or COP to POP size that's similarly related, because I think that'd be information that would be useful for us at council. Understanding what you explained today is that, council is at the end of the day the one that will be looking at approving the budget or not. So that's the first one. The other piece is, and I'm not sure if you have this answer, this might be actually something for the DOJ for correspondence, or maybe they want to say yes or no. So my understanding is if we were to look at changing the current service agreement, which is 70-30, HRM paying this 30, if we change that, I think it switches to HRM paying 70 and either province or the federal government paying the 30. And I'm just wondering if that's your understanding. If we relook at that service agreement, does that change how that funding aspect works? And again, you might not have that answer today, or maybe you do. And then the last one is related to the final ask of I'll just say 700,000 just to make it round. Is that 700,000 minus 70, or is that 700,000 already included the 70% that's not paid by HRM?
Through the chair, thank you, Commissioner Smith. I'll deal with the last question first, if I may. It's my understanding that is essentially the discounted cost subject to some adjustment and estimation as the costing is completed. But it's my understanding that cost is already discounted essentially by the 30%. The second question that you asked is a rather significant one, and I will look to my colleagues in the Department of Justice, but the nature of the Territorial Police Services Agreement or the Provincial Police Service Agreement have parties signing for periods of time. It's one party or another is then required to provide notice. 2 years, folks are signaling to me, and then they enter into a negotiation. I don't think it would be fair or appropriate for me. One of the distinctions in my role is not to represent sort of the negotiation of sort of police service delivery between Public Safety Canada and the Department of Justice, but I'm sure the Department of Justice may wish to follow up. It may or may not be an in-camera discussion about exactly how the contract works across the province. There is some variation based on historical contracts versus current ones. So again, we certainly follow up with your CFO, with Stephen Onge here from the Department of Justice in due course, or I could invite them up to speak tonight as the group feels. The original question is around stats and statistics. So certainly we could undertake, make a note to try and look at some of the comparators. But again, the police industry is quite large, so there's some comparators out there that we can probably find from a planning perspective. It may be that the public safety folks also have some comparators as well. We talked about the strategy folks that are building the strategy. As I recall, they had a number of also statistics in there. The challenge is, again, looking at the uniqueness of the service delivery, which is also population size, but access to specialized resources. We sometimes forget that there is no boundary for cybercrime. There is no boundary for internet child exploitation. There is no boundary for criminals that prey across international boundaries. So again, when we think of what does a community need, what does a community wish to have in terms of the suite of resources, that's part of the discussion of these type of moments, that we provide options, and then informed parties and stakeholders can help determine what are the resources that we need to keep communities safe. So it really is a discussion, and that's inherent to the contract.
Thank you. Commissioner Blackburn?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you again for the presentation. Just looking to confirm a couple of things. So you said between 2014 and 2019, there was a 70% increase in mental health calls. And are the trends suggesting that is continuing to climb post 2019? And then just wondering as well if you can confirm my understanding of what the process and the procedure is for mental health calls. If you have to take somebody to the hospital, then that Mountie has to sit with that patient until a doctor takes over. And of course, given the status of the ERs around town, that could be 8, 10, 12, 16 hours that officer is then off the streets doing other policing work. So just wanted to confirm those two things. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Blackburn, and Chair, through you to the board. That is correct. We have seen a 70% increase in our mental health calls, and that trend is continuing on an upward trajectory. Mental health calls are very time consuming, very resource heavy, and you are correct. Under the IPTA in the province of Nova Scotia, the Involuntary Psychiatric Treatment Act, persons taken to a hospital remain in police custody until such time as they are seen by a health professional. And you are right that in the medical system, we're all aware that there's an overload there. And we have cases where sometimes that is taking 12, 16, 18, 20 hours, where we have police resources tied up, often more than one, depending on the situation. So, when we take our watches and pull 2 resources off for, 12 to 20 hours, those are 2 resources that can't be out in the community directly helping the local area residents.
If I may add, Chair, just to Commissioner Blackburn's comment and something we've discussed before as a group, which is mental illness is not a crime. And in a perfect world, there would be no calls to police. There is a safety nature to those calls that I suspect will continue, notwithstanding whatever the great models, hopefully, that are continued to build up. And just as you suggested, the availability of police and the speed that they may or may not be released from a healthcare or another area, it's all about safely diffusing to the extent that we can. And that takes time. And yet, sometimes that is exactly what is required to de-escalate is time. However, when that time is being invested, police officers aren't available, as you discussed. Thank you.
Commissioner Critchley.
Thank you. And Chief Superintendent Christie, this is just a follow-up. It's a similar question to what I asked you last meeting, but again, I think it's a natural follow-up to your points in response to my colleagues, Commissioner Smith and Commissioner Blackburn. It's so the request here is for, patrol officers, effectively, right? It's additional officers. It's not a request for specialized or increased funding for the mobile mental health crisis team. I'm with you there that there's obviously limitations to that program. I mean, I've been on this board since September of 2019, and I've expressed concerns about the fact that year over year, despite the increases in calls as has been indicated, funding for that program has remained fairly consistent. It has not increased over time as the population's increased, as the need has increased. So I guess my question is, if that is a major pressure that's being placed on the RCMP, and I'm hearing you that it is, notwithstanding the points that I made as it relates to legislative reforms to IPTA that are being contemplated. And as I indicated previously, one of my colleagues from Legal Aid is on the committee. That's one of the number one issues that they're looking at is how can they, civilianize that role so that there's an individual there so that police can get back to the work that's more appropriately for them to do. But notwithstanding all that, if the need is relating to mental health services, why not make a request for more specialized services, which in HRM currently is the mobile mental health crisis team, to in order to as indicated, increase its access, increase the catchment for that program into those outlying areas, and increase the availability of that program outside of those sort of 8 to 4 hours as were indicated. Make it so that would be my question. Thank you.
Chair, through you to Commissioner Critchley. Those are great questions, Commissioner, and the heart of those questions are how do we work with partners to keep communities safe? And certainly being new and joining this team over the last 6 weeks, I'm looking forward to actually more conversations such as that. Who are the partners? What are perhaps more specialized or tactical resources that can be partnered with to bear? But factually, as I stand here tonight, the metrics in the business cases speak to extensive growth in population. I have to acknowledge the wear and tear on the men and women, in fact, all categories of employees in the RCMP Halifax District that provide service. They may provide service on criminal records checks. They may be doing safety events at parades. They may be responding to mental health calls. And while tonight we're focusing specifically on the regular member, the sworn police officer with a sidearm, it is in the written business case again that we're working with the provincial government and partners around additional public servants. So to your heart of your question is, why is this business case not more specialized? Don't have really a good answer for you. It could be. We could have brought a whole bunch of specialized ideas. But when we build a house, we need a strong foundation. We need a foundation based on the watches and the wear and tear of the regular members to make sure we have good responses across the vastness of the Halifax Regional Municipality landscape. I'm looking forward, and I would be more than willing to discuss with folks the ability to grow that mobile mental health team, if you will. But tonight, it's not in the business case.
Thank you. Seeing no further requests for consideration or question clarification, I would like to remind commissioners that tonight we have no mandate to affect the consideration of Halifax Regional Council. That's the decision for this request. There has been precedent set in the past for potentially having a recommendation from the Board of Police to endorse the recommendation and for it to go to Budget Committee, or just refer it to the Budget Committee, or let it stand and it would be considered in the due process of the regular budget process for Halifax Council. So I'll leave it at the will of the board. Okay, thanks. Yeah, so at this stage, you guys can think about that as we go forward. And we will now proceed with public consultation on the Halifax Police. No, we'll actually hear from the chief first. HRP. Thank you. I don't like the way this agenda is put for me.
Just looking for the start button there. If you can help me, just let you. Just not seeing it. It's there, I know. Perfect. Good evening, Chair and members of the Halifax Board of Police Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to once again bring forward information for the proposed Halifax Regional Police 2023-2024 operating budget in today's meeting with members of the public. Before I start with the slides, I'd like to open with some comments to provide a brief overview and overall rationale for this proposal. And then we will go through the slide deck. For the 2023-2024 fiscal year, Halifax Regional Police is proposing an operating budget of $95.264 million, compared to $89.195 million in 2022-2023. The vast portion of this increase is tied with compensation increases related to staffing and collective bargaining. Aside from that, we have brought forward for your consideration service enhancements amounting to a total of just under $628,000. Once again this year, we have worked very hard to bring forward a request that both balances the required resources for our most critical public safety needs, while recognizing that we are operating under a very tight fiscal environment. Before I provide further context, I would like to note a few key points that underpin our request for this year. Most of our requests are a continuation of delivering on key themes that commissioners heard last year at length. I am pleased to say that some already build on the demonstrable success of budget requests approved by the board and council last year, notably to do with our member reintegration program and our new hate crime unit. They support our efforts to close historic and current gaps related to operational capacity, addressing issues related to member wellness, responding to attrition, and bolstering some of our specialized capabilities as policing needs evolve. An aspect of it has been informed by important discussions that have occurred over the last year, especially in the context of the Mass Casualty Commission. These requests, while addressing some of the most critical current public safety needs, will also position us for our future and long-term success by continually building a healthy and sustainable organization. This is even more important during a time when we are seeing significant challenges facing policing, not just here in Nova Scotia and Halifax, but across the country and beyond. These requests are aligned with what we are seeing among many of our peers across the country and are informed by evidence, best practices, and sustainability. I am also joined today by many subject matter experts and management representatives from the Halifax Regional Police who have assisted in the creation of this proposal and provided valuable insights. Before I start, I once again want to pass along my gratitude for the work and dedication of all HRP members, both sworn and civilian, whose tireless work helps keep us safe around the clock, day in and day out. I also want to thank the Board of Police Commissioners for your ongoing engagement and advocacy on behalf of our community as we deliver our public safety mandate, as we sharpen our focus on inclusivity and respect in the workplace, and the delivery of legitimate and bias-free policing services to the community. Budget planning should, to the extent possible, align with the strategic plan of any organization. And I know that there is strong appetite on the part of the commissioners increasingly to see that connection. The next slide will briefly review the key strategic themes that are foundational to this budget request. In some instances, budget requests could overlap into other strategic areas. While I do not intend to get into a lot of detail today on HRP's strategic plan, just a quick overview that these are the three key pillars of HRP's 10-year strategic plan. All of our budget priorities, especially the proposed service enhancements, are inherently linked to these priority areas. In turn, our strategic plan is closely aligned with council priorities, which are reflected in the annual business planning process for the municipality. The three themes central to our strategic plan are crime reduction and improved quality of life, safe communities and partnerships, and effective and innovative police services. I also want to briefly touch on some of our key strategic outcomes from the year 2022-2023. This is by no means an exhaustive list. You will see in the budget many of the themes driving these outcomes reflected in the new request. As I previously stated, this budget and our related service enhancements will build on the work we've been doing in important areas, most notably closing historic and current gaps related to operational capacity, addressing critical issues related to member wellness, responding to attrition, and bolstering HRP's most critical specialized policing capabilities. On the screen is a list of budget requests, which I will expand on later in the presentation. These budget requests would amount to a total of just under $628,000 for the 2023-2024 budget if approved. HRP has made significant progress in bolstering our overall approach on member wellness and supports for return to work initiatives. We are requesting the approval to bring on a staff police psychologist and an occupational therapy nurse. This would be a next significant step, which would allow us to move forward with creating a multifaceted return to work and member wellness strategy. Our requests related to additional ERT and K9 team leads are responsive to our commitment to maintain important specialized and supervisory capabilities aligned with the service of our size. With ongoing attrition and in anticipation of multi-year recruitment campaigns, we are requesting a permanent role for the supervision of our recruitment function instead of the current seconded role from patrol. Further details on these positions will be provided later in the presentation. Since the establishment of our new hate crimes unit less than a year ago, we have made significant strides in progressing this important area of investigation. And our team has done an excellent job of establishing a new unit, getting trained, and providing service-wide training, and our statistics related to casework show that we are on the right track. A dedicated operational supervisor for this unit will be an important addition to this team. This is just a high-level budget slide that outlines where we are and where we're proposing to go. This explains it without service enhancements. And this shows the total with the proposed service enhancements. On December 12, 2022, HRM Finance undertook an exercise to receive proposed budget reductions from all business units to the Budget Committee to achieve a 4% target instead of the original 8% target. After close consideration and risk analysis, HRP proposed one reduction and one item that would increase revenue. Any decision by the BOPC on these items could adjust the budget slightly. This chart lays out where the proposed reductions are in the amount of $83,600 associated to the Lake Bannock Patrol, which was proposed based on the fact that Halifax Fire already has overall responsibilities associated with lake and water bodies rescue services, including ice safety. The table also includes the forecast and the increase of extra duty revenue. The total proposed reduction is $237,500. At this point, these figures are not factored into the budget, as the overall budget may be adjusted by the Board of Police Commissioners. Member wellness and capacity constraints within policing have reached crisis levels across the policing profession. There is widespread recognition within my policing peers that more needs to be done to support members holistically. At a recent meeting, there was a discussion amongst my peer group from chiefs across Canada suggesting that at some point in the near future, we may have to hire 1.5 members for every serving member to be able to stay ahead of this crisis. Overall sentiment towards policing is also taking a toll on members, impacting morale and further tightening competition for talent during a time of rapid attrition. Recruitment challenges exist in a big way in North America wide. North America, we are all recruiting from the same talent pool. HRP is unique in that we have our own in-house police science program. We have taken the opportunity and will graduate our third successive class in July of 2023. We need to ensure that we are future ready, and HRP will need to run a cadet class every year for the next several years to keep up with retirements and attrition. The nature of crime is changing. As a police service of our size and stature in this region, we must continually be able to respond both proactively and reactively to address, prevent, and suppress crime using the best and most current tools available in policing. On that note, we recently put to tender a remotely operated vehicle, ROV, for underwater-based investigations, and a drone for assistance with tactical operations for their aerial photographs of crime scenes and significant traffic collisions. On the same theme of keeping up with current best practices, we have had detailed discussions on the body-worn camera technology at this board, and we all recognize that these discussions must be thorough as they are time and resource consuming. While this budget doesn't bring back that proposal, I would be remiss not to mention that body-worn cameras is an area that will require our continued attention and ongoing discussion. As this technology becomes more and more common in other jurisdictions and as a tool for both transparency and capturing information accurately.
Chief, may I interrupt for a moment?
Sure.
I just want to be cognizant of the time and the attendance of the public. We want to make sure that, of course, we want to make sure you have a chance to articulate what you have, but we've done that once already. In the interest of making sure we have enough time to do the public consultation, would you like an opportunity to maybe condense some of this a little bit or perhaps leave those other slides knowing that it's already been presented, it's been public, to, if case there's questions and answers, and be able to respond to them that way?
I absolutely can
Yeah.
trim it down, Chair.
Is that
I'm
okay
in
with
your
the
hands.
board? That we do that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I think that if you could do that, maybe just summarize a little bit more to wrap it up, a couple minutes, and then we'll segue into the presentations
Sure.
or the public consultation.
Our next slide talks a little bit about the population in HRM and how it is definitely on the rise. We've seen that steady growth over the years. What we haven't seen, that's a little too fast, I think. What we haven't seen is the same increase in staffing as we've increased with our population. One of the things that we are focusing on is recruitment and attrition as the global challenges continue. And you can see our HRP cadet class is paying dividends for us and the program itself. Recruitment of experienced police officers, we continue to do that to make sure we're bolstering our resources. And the same with the recruitment of new cadets. We've done a lot of that over the last 3 years. Just quickly going over our asks again. I think the board has it. We are seeking a psychologist, and currently we use a psychologist on a pay-per-use basis. This will give us this resource in-house. We're also looking for the occupational health therapy nurse. This again will provide the expertise we need in-house to best look after our members, we believe, and best serve the public. Many organizations are going this way already, or they've already established significant and robust psychological services sections in-house. And there's some of the police services that are utilizing these roles. This is where they would fit into the key pillars of HRP member well-being and supports. The police science program supervisor, we're looking for an increase of 1 sworn sergeant. Currently, we have to second a sergeant from patrol, leaving a gap in supervision and patrol while we supervise our police science program. We're looking to close that gap for efficiencies. The hate crime unit detective is self-explanatory. Hate crimes are rising very, very quickly. And this resource will help us, again, close that supervisory gap and also allow us to stay ahead of the burgeoning investigations that are coming to us almost daily. And that's just a quick slide to see how quickly our hate crime incidents and hate crimes themselves are increasing. The other request, as I've mentioned, is around the ERT Canine Supervisor. This again will provide and close some gaps in supervision and allow for more efficient and effective policing and supervision of our members. Just quickly, some of the key financial highlights. There they are. 5 new positions next year, $627,700 or just under $628,000. And they're just for the board's edification, review, and reference are the capital budget highlights that were requested. And I'll take any questions. Any questions from the board?
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to suggest that we keep this rolling, and I don't want to stifle any burning questions, but we do have a concern around quorum at 7:30, and we want to make sure that the public have the opportunity. So if it's okay with commissioners of the board, then I'd like to just carry on. Yeah, thank you. We can come back to questions later if we have time, if not at the next meeting. So we'll move now into public consultation, and speakers can participate for a maximum of 5 minutes. Please keep your comments respectful, on topic, and directed to the chair. The clerk will hold up a yellow sign when you have 30 seconds remaining, and when your time is complete, the clerk will hold up a red sign. After everyone on the list has been given an opportunity to speak, I will call 3 times to ask there have been any additional speakers. I would ask or remind you that there is no clapping and cheering and laughing, moaning, that kind of thing. It can be interpreted as disrespectful. It certainly can also slow this process down. We want to make sure that all speakers have the respect and safety within the chamber that they deserve to have. So thank you very much, and we will proceed. I Thank you. I have a speakers list that people have signed up for in advance and/or this evening. So I'd now like to call upon Kate McDonald, followed by Lou Campbell and Brody Weaver. And we ask that you come to the podium, this podium, and state your name and your localized community, please. No, this one over here. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kate McDonald. I think most people know that actually. I currently live in Cole Harbor, but I was raised in Halifax, so wherever you want to tick the box. So since this meeting was called in person and we are not into regularly practicing that, I asked folks on social media what they would rather see this money spent on. Both folks said, or tons of folks actually responded and said healthcare and housing. We actually heard from the HRMP and RCMP tonight that they are feeling the weight of these services collapsing. So my question is, why wouldn't we fund those services? Other people also said literally anything else. How are we funding the police again? Honestly, how are we not adding to healthcare and housing infrastructure? Seriously, we have the numbers. I didn't bring them today. I'm not telling you guys again and again. How many more times are we going to meet like this? At one point, police actually used to call my personal line to consult with me about how to make better relationships with community. And I stand here still a community expert. Nothing's changed about me. So why am I not considered an expert now here today? What's changed? What's changed? So my request is that we fund literally anything else, and that we redirect some of the money allotted for positive employee and public relations under innovative policing back to community initiatives that have proven successful. There's nothing innovative about policing. It's literally on brand with what the entire country is doing in direct opposition to tons of funded reports. Lots of those reports have come out of the city. Again, I'd also have a question about who is recognizing the National Hate Crimes Unit and what they're being recognized for. That doesn't seem transparent. I can't sit here and say that I'm like super jazzed to be standing in front of you again. I'm not. At what point are people going to care about people? I don't think policing is rooted in that. I can speak from personal experience. So I'm stoked to see community here, and I'm not excited to be here once again. I don't feel listened to, and at what point will I be listened to again? Cool, thanks.
Now call upon Lou Campbell, then Brody Weaver, Kaylee Kennedy.
Hi, my name is Lou Campbell. I live on Gottingen Street. I think that's District 7 or 8. I just moved, so I can't remember which one. First off, I just want to encourage that for future meetings, we have the possibility to join virtually, which we had during the pandemic. That stuff doesn't have to go away, and a lot of people can't be here because it's in person. What we're here to speak about, I'm here to show my strong opposition to a police budget increase. As a community, I think we need to shift our focus and therefore our money from funding the punishment of crime to funding its prevention. Crime is prevented by greater access to public services and things like community support. More money to hire more police and pay them more is the last thing we need in my community. There's a housing crisis raging in this city. Homelessness is rampant. Groceries and the cost of living has skyrocketed. People are struggling to meet their basic needs, and these things lead to crime. Addressing crime means giving funding to public services and redirecting funding into initiatives that prevent crime, not funneling more money into the police. I personally have experienced violence from the police in this city. Last year, someone entered my home while I was on my back deck. They were in extreme mental distress and would not leave. I had to find a way to get help. I was terrified of calling the police because I have seen firsthand they are not trained to de-escalate. But I had no other options available to me due to the lack of funding for real solutions and people equipped to actually help. Funding for things like a mental health crisis unit that can actually show up in person with proper training would be extremely helpful in instances like this. The one I called couldn't come and told me to call the police, which eventually I had to do. As expected, they were not helpful. They entered my property in droves, stormed my building, acted aggressively, in a way that was absolutely not necessary for the situation at hand. I was thrown to the ground trying to block them from entering my own home because I wanted to calm them down. And I was threatened for arrest for obstruction of justice in my own home. My house was torn apart. Myself, my roommates, and most importantly, the person who was in mental distress was left traumatized. Is this really what we should be giving more money to? I am literally afraid to call the police, and I avoid doing so at all costs. I don't want my tax money being used to fund violence and negligence, and to be frank, absolute incompetence with situations with any kind of care or nuance. When I hear the RCMP and the police come up here and say it takes time to implement new solutions as some kind of excuse for why we should give more money to police, it leads me to ask the chair, when will proactive solutions begin to emerge if all money is being funneled to the police? It does take time, and it takes money. The hundreds of thousands and even millions being asked for can be better spent building new solutions, not hiring more cops who don't get trained properly and go on to cause harm in the community everywhere they go. The chief spoke to a growing negative sentiment toward the police held by the public. Your actions are responsible for that. And it's based on the way you treat the community. We don't want more police who get paid six figures to hurt us and storm into our homes and traumatize us. Crime rates go down when people have their basic needs met, when there are supportive public services to assist them, when there are funded community outreach programs, when alternative crisis response units are trained and made available so that mentally ill people don't end up in jail. Imagine what a great city we could have with libraries offering even more free education to the community, public transit's cheap or even free, and people can go out and seek opportunities or build community with each other. I do not believe investing any more money in the police of the HR or in this community is the way forward. And I urge you, please, please, can you listen to us when we continually say this? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll call Brody Weaver and Kaylee Kennedy and Raphael McDonald.
I don't think Brody's here.
No? Okay, I'll leave them for in case that person does show up. Kaylee Kennedy.
Hi, good evening, board members. My name is Kaylee Kennedy, and I'm a resident here in District 5. I'm also a master's student at Mount St. Vincent University, where my research is focused on responses to sexualized and gender-based violence. And for more than 10 years, I have volunteered with a group called Books Beyond Bars, which provides literacy-based programs inside the Burnside Jail to women and trans people on the East Unit. Through this work, I've had the privilege of meeting dozens of women, trans people, and non-binary people facing incarceration. And their stories have strengthened my long-held belief that we need to divest from policing and prisons as our primary approach to dealing with social and historical issues. Many of the people I have met who are incarcerated have experienced intergenerational trauma. Many struggle with mental illness and addiction. They are often incarcerated for reasons related to systemic injustices, including racism, colonialism, ableism, and homophobia and transphobia. And the statistics tell us the majority of women who are incarcerated have been subjected to gender-based violence and sexualized violence. And most women in prison are, like me, parents. The goal of our governments, municipal, provincial, and federal, should be to reduce the number of people who are incarcerated and reduce the costs associated with policing in prisons. And when we invest more in policing, it means that more people are incarcerated. Addressing the foundational issues that lead people to be incarcerated, including a lack of housing, low wages, criminally low social assistance rates, no access to mental health supports and counseling, and the lack of community-based anti-violence initiatives, and the systemic issues of racism is what is required, not handing more resources to the police. And while I understand that the scope of municipal governments is limited, I believe you have the opportunity to send a message that you agree that we should divest from policing. Otherwise, I think that as a board, you and as a kind of as council after this session, become complicit in a system that harms individuals in our community. So take, for example, an instance of shoplifting. The province sets minimum wage rates and social assistance rates so low that people can't afford to live. There's not adequate housing. The greed of corporations has made groceries so high that our food banks are running out of food. And so someone steals food or something of value that they can sell or trade in order to pay for food. And now the HRP or the RCMP is arresting that person. So what good has that done in our community? I would say really not much. I would say none. But the damage that has been done to that individual is also significant. So they might lose their kids or their job. They can mean that an arrest can mean that they don't have access to their medication or important health appointments or counseling appointments. For people who have been arrested or incarcerated before, these risks are even more intense. So while I understand that this funding increase is largely related to staffing contracts, I think it further reinforces the need to detask the police from responding to many issues. And I think that, the board and the city has a report that outlines ways that we can do that. So as I'm sure everyone knows, the defunding the police report outlines detailed proposals to detask the police from responding to mental health issues, traffic enforcement and safety, and third-party sexual assault reporting, and further suggests that there is an opportunity to detask from additional elements that currently the police deal with, including overdoses, noise complaints, incidents with young people, and incidents with unhoused community members. The report also recommends that we need an alternative response to intimate partner and gender-based violence, and that's something that my own research supports. My research has shown that police have not been the most appropriate institution to investigate and address sexualized and gender-based violence. While it may be difficult for some to see how such a detasking can happen, that report and the people that wrote it and so many other capable, smart, and creative frontline service workers, academics, and formerly incarcerated people live in our city and are people that we can use as a resource or that we can access as experts to move that detasking along. Before I conclude, I'd like to comment on something I've heard from the police services this evening. The issues that the police are dealing with are more complex, and the reality is that the HRP, RCMP, and other police forces have repeatedly shown that they are incapable of dealing with that complexity. The challenges faced by police are also faced by other first responders, including firefighters, paramedics, nurses, and other frontline service workers, and yet there is no movement to divest from those services. I'd like to thank you for your time, and I hope you will do the courageous thing and turn down this budget increase request.
Thank you, Kaylee. Now call on Raphael McDonald, followed by Kristen Green and Caitlin O'Neill.
Hello, thank you. My name is Raphael MacDonald. I'm a resident of Lower Sackville, but I've lived Halifax, all over the HRM through my time here. I currently work as a youth outreach art facilitator. I've worked with Arts Express in Spryfield for many years. I've worked with McPhee Center in Dartmouth. I've worked with the George Dixon Center one summer as their summer arts coordinator. And really, I see my job as working with these youth so that they get to a point where they never, ever have an interaction with the police. Because we know that once those interactions with the police start, it begins a cycle where they believe that that's just going to keep happening. And we want to build confidence in them. We want to help them find skills, and we want to just basically keep them away from anything like that. And I do think that it's very unfortunate that we've gotten to that point now where there's such a mistrust of police in our society that we are actively trying to keep our children away from any sort of interaction with them. When I think about $6 million going towards a few positions at the police force, as opposed to the work that my colleagues and I could do with $6 million, more room for students, more support for art workers or other types of educators that can give the type of care and dedication to these students that they deserve to keep them on a happy path. It's really it's disheartening to think that all the struggle, all the work that we do kind of gets whisked away while something like this is just going to get rubber stamped. I do believe that as a community, for almost 10, 15 years now, since 2008, we've been asked to do more with less. And I think it's probably time for the police services to also probably do more with less. I don't think, looking at recent issues where the city and the province has failed to get us a new art gallery, they failed to find a home for NASCAD, and now it looks like the new additions to the hospital are under threat. With all these things that our communities desperately, desperately need, to just see something get rubber stamped like this is very disheartening. And I don't believe that the police frontline really do care about the community. One incident happened a few years ago where police were called for help after an altercation with some people on Gottingen Street, and they took me for a ride to basically see if we could find them. And during that time, the dispatcher came on and said, "Oh, there's an incident down in Dummyville." And one of the police officers asked, Dummyville, what's that?" And the supervisor driving said, "Oh, I don't know why she said that, but that's the George Dixon Center." So I think if that's what dispatchers are saying, then we really do have a problem with our frontline workers not really considering the community as something worth helping, perhaps just an adversary from them in their paychecks, or perhaps going home at night. I'm not really sure, but I really think that there's some deep-seated issues in there and things need to be rooted out. And of course, that maybe they need to do more with less. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Call on Kristen Green. Not seeing any movement. I'll move now to Caitlin O'Neill. And I'll follow that up with Katie Clark and Madison Geldhart.
I want to start my remarks by acknowledging the many voices that will not be heard in this meeting tonight due to the deliberate choice to make it less accessible than the previous year. To name a few: people who cannot afford to attend, people who are not able to share physical space with police officers due to past trauma from police violence, which, as many in this room know, disproportionately affects marginalized people, and many disabled people, a group that makes up half of the people who are killed by police. These perspectives that were blocked from being here today are valuable, crucial perspectives, and I'm sure many others in this room would like an answer as to why they were excluded. And I personally would also like a commitment that a virtual meeting will be held so that their important voices can be heard. Saying they can write in through an email does not give them equitable access, the same as people who are able to come and speak here today. On to my other remarks. While across the Halifax Regional Municipality, other services, programs, and ordinary people are being forced to tighten their belts, the Halifax Regional Police Force and RCMP want to be placed above everyone else and be exempt from this. While everyone else faces cuts, they demand cash. The RCMP is asking for millions of dollars to add 6 extra officers because of complex mental health calls. How many resources have others, as other speakers have said, could be funded through these millions of dollars that would actually directly improve people's mental health rather than policing them and having them come in contact with an often traumatizing encounter with the police? Police are not mental health professionals. In 2018, CBC investigated and found that 42% of people who were killed that year by the police were in mental distress. That is the worst case scenario of a wellness check gone wrong. I'm sure you're all familiar with the expression that when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And what we need is better tools. We don't need more investment in policing to solve the mental health issues that are being faced by people in the HRM. We need better resources. The RCMP and HRP have said that their number of officers has not grown as quickly as the population. However, what they didn't include is that Halifax still has more police per 100,000 people than most other major municipalities in Canada. Does Halifax need more police than Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, many other larger cities? I personally think not. I think that they already have a strong enough foundation. Did I get my card? Sorry. Last year, the HRP said they needed funds to support their overworked officers. We saw the HRP officers that were allegedly overworked pick up extra shifts as armed gunmen protecting loaves of bread at the local grocery store. Fundamentally, we cannot police our way out of a cost of living crisis. We cannot police our way out of houselessness. We cannot police our way out of a healthcare crisis. Halifax is at a crossroads with our growing population. Do we want to follow the same tired model of gutting services that make our communities safer, healthier, and happier, and putting those resources continually towards police? Or are we ready to invest in making our communities better? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now call on Katie Clark.
Hey folks, thanks everyone for being here. My name is Kate Clark. I'm from District 7. I also want to address the issue of meeting accessibility. Having this meeting without the possibility of a virtual component feels like a deliberate pushing out of community members who cannot access this space in person for the reasons aforementioned. And I hope the council will do better in the future, providing a digital accessible option for participation. On the topic of the police budget, I'm here to firmly oppose the increase in the police budget. As previously mentioned, the recent Defunding the Police report found that Halifax has a higher number of police officers per 100,000 people than the national average, but our rates of violence are above average for Canadian cities, and Halifax is the city with the 12th highest rate of violent crime per capita in Canada. Yet cities that spend more on policing often have equivalent, if not higher, rates of crime than cities who spend less. I'm confused as to what this increase will do to protect our community if that is what we're claiming that police do. There's a lot of talk about increased officers as population increases, but I didn't hear any evidence of a direct correlation between community safety and the number of officers in our community, or reason that those people might need more officers around them. And there were also requests from commissioners for research and statistics, and I think there were some mentions of research that could be done, and I am wondering why that research was not done and why there wasn't a fully researched outlined proposal of why exactly these new officers are necessary. Anybody else who asks for funding from a municipal or any other kind of budget has to provide extensive research. So I'm wondering why the police don't have to do the same. I'm also wondering why we would need more officers when there are off-duty officers picking up shifts at the superstore, as previously mentioned, trying to criminalize people for accessing food, which is a basic human right. And also wondering where all the money that got spent on evicting people from parks without providing adequate housing, while this number of shelter beds in the city decreased once again. I wonder where that money went, or why that money needed to be spent. And it's heartbreaking that the city would consider this kind of budget increase when there are so many places, as aforementioned, we could go on forever, that could really, really use this kind of funding and support community. In particular, libraries programming, including housing supports, social and physical space to be in community, has probably saved more lives than police officers or police have in the past 5 years, yet your municipal budget is only $23 million. If we're talking about protecting our community, I wonder why this $6 million would not go to programs and organizations supporting folks fleeing domestic violence, housing supports that actually meet the needs and demands of the community, education programs that gets kids access to mental health support in school. These are life-saving programs. You spoke about the most critical public safety needs, and I agree with those who spoke before me that these things are probably housing, access to food, healthcare, rather than people with not a lot of training that walk around with guns. And yeah, I would just like to see more concrete evidence, if that evidence really does exist, that policing increases public safety, because I have found a lot of evidence to the contrary. And also, to echo what's previously been said, if there is a lack of mental health services, then invest in mental health services, not more people with guns. If the job isn't being done well now, if people are dying at wellness checks, they will continue to do so, and more police officers with the same approach will not improve that situation. So yeah, I ask that the proposed budget increase be rejected in support for community services and folks in the community that could really use the support. Thanks.
Excuse me, could you stay at the mic as we have a question of clarification from a commissioner?
Yes.
Thanks for being
Commissioner.
here tonight. Sorry, Chair. Can you just repeat the initial numbers that you mentioned at the beginning, please? Thank you.
So this was some reports from around, I think some of them were 2020, some of them were 2019. And then the defunding police report. So Halifax has a higher number of officers per 100,000 people than the national average. Our rates of violence are above average for Canadian cities. Halifax is the city with the 12th highest rate of violence per capita. I'm pretty sure that was from 2020, but it came up pretty easily when I Googled it. And comparing other cities that were on that list for violent crime versus police budgets, which I believe was a 2020 it wasn't CTV, I think it might have been CBC report. When I was correlating the communities that spent more on police, they didn't have significantly lower rates of violent crime.
Thank you. Now call Madison Geldart, followed by Dalhousie Legal Aid, followed by Colin May. It's Madison and there she comes.
Hello.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name's Madison Geldart. I currently reside in East Preston. I'm not sure what that district that is. I've lived there for half my life. Yeah, I'm a psychology student at SMU, and I'm currently focusing a lot on forensics. And for those who don't know, forensics is where psychology and the law kind of cross over. The part of the proposal that really stuck out to me the most was wanting a psychologist for the police officers. And the reason why that stuck out the most is because at face value, that seems pretty reasonable. However, to me, it makes more sense to use that money to invest in mental health services for all, as there is a clear shortage of doctors of all kinds, which includes mental health professionals. It's difficult for anyone to access a psychologist right now, and I believe part of the reason for that is lack of funding for psychology grad schools. It's hard to get into a grad school focusing on psychology due to the limited funding, and there's only a small amount of individuals in grad school for psychology because that's all the school can afford. More funding means more potential psychologists. More psychologists means more people with access to mental health services, which in turn would include police officers. But the increase of mental health services would also decrease a lot of instances cops have to deal with, as mentioned multiple times. I included some things that I've been learning in my classes, but it was kind of already stated by them and by other people who have been speaking. But yeah. Mental health, people who are struggling with mental health really do clash with the legal system more often than people who are not struggling with mental health issues. And I found a paper that we were actually discussing in one of my classes. And the reasons for that could include, the paper states that the reasons for that could include social and systemic factors such as poorly funded and fragmented community-based mental health services, overly restrictive civil commitment criteria, hospital bed pressures, homelessness, and poverty. These are all things currently happening in Halifax. Another study we recently looked at, individuals with struggling with mental health issues are almost twice as likely to be arrested by someone who's not. Anyways, this is just going over basically all the stats they said. As you can see, basically, the public's mental health drastically affects the workload of police officers, and our city currently has all the criteria to make these instances higher. Policing is just a band-aid to deeper systemic issues. Study after study shows an increase in policing does not help crime in any way, but a better quality of life does. It makes more sense to invest into the well-being of the public before investing into this. As we have seen, public well-being will decrease the need for police anyway. Kinsella has stated that one of the reasons for the psychologist is due to the negative public sentiment towards police officers. Aren't police officers supposed to be serving the people? If the people have a negative public sentiment towards them, they must not be doing what they're supposed to be. Instead, despite claims of being short-staffed, we see our Halifax Regional Police in grocery stores and drugstores making sure to stop theft of essential items. Seems to me more Halifax Regional Police is serving and protecting companies and institutions, not people. What is more a crime? Keeping food from starving people or arresting people trying to access food because they're starving? These are the questions HRP needs to ask themselves in order to cope with this negative public sentiment. These are the changes that need to be made, not an increase in budget. Thank you.
Excuse me, I'm going to now call on representatives of Dalhousie Legal Aid, Joanne Huzzy and Keisha Ryan, who will be sharing their 5 minutes.
Thanks. So I really appreciate that we did have the opportunity to present here today. My name is Joanne Hussey. I'm a community legal worker at Dalhousie Legal Aid. And this is Keisha Ryan. She's a senior law student who has just started her term with us, who was very brave in agreeing to come with me this evening. Can we change the slides? Sorry, you can go to the next one. Thanks. So just a little bit about what Dalhousie Legal Aid Service does. We've been in operation since 1970. We're the oldest clinical law program in Canada. And the mandate of Dalhousie Legal Aid includes engaging in issues related to law reform in Nova Scotia, which is why this is important to us. So according to the Police Act and bylaw number P100, the Halifax Board of Police Commissioners is tasked with ensuring that community needs and values are reflected in policing priorities, objectives, goals, programs, and strategies, and ensuring that police services are delivered in a manner consistent with community values, needs, and expectations. So as service providers working to increase access to justice, we want to share some of our understanding of the current needs and expectations of our community. So last year, the 2 community legal workers in our office assisted 113 individuals who are facing eviction. And in our work, we often see that intersection of the complete inadequacy of income assistance rates, a lack of access to mental health supports, inadequate access to care for seniors, limited support for people with addictions, and the criminalization of all of these complex systemic problems. So it's from that perspective that we want to be able to speak to this proposed increase, which we would not support from our position in our community.
So we would instead like to share our support for some key recommendations from the Defunding the Police report prepared by the Board of the Police Commission Subcommittee. These recommendations reflect some of the community needs and values that we expect to see reflected in police services within the HRM. The report makes clear that defunding the police is not about making cuts to the police budget for austerity's sake. Instead, it's about making legislative and policy reforms intended to promote community safety, tying police budgets to clear performance metrics, and ultimately decreasing budgetary allocations to police while increasing investment in vital safety promoting, community building resources that are chronically underfunded. Members of the public who contributed to the Defunded the Police report most frequently cite mental health and substance use supports and affordable housing as an area most in need of reinvestment. The requested increase in the HRP budget cites increasing complexity and changing policing needs. These are in part due to ongoing crises in healthcare and housing, which are impacting all frontline service providers. Police forces themselves have acknowledged that they are not properly trained to address many of these issues. In an addendum to the Defund the Police report, the authors acknowledged what happened on the grounds of the old library on August 18th as reflective of this disconnect. The police are not the appropriate vehicle to address the complex needs and systemic issues that are often called on to address. As the report states, the over-resourcing of police and the corresponding under-resourcing of social supports leads to the criminalization of socially based issues of poverty, mental health, addictions, and trauma. We support the recommendation from the report to reduce per capita spending on the HRP to bring the budget more closely in line with cities of comparable size and population. Funds should be reinvested in civilian-only mental health crisis intervention teams aligned with best practice and used to increase per capita spending on housing.
So the point that we want to make here is that safe communities are communities where everyone has everything that they need, where they have enough income, where they have safe and affordable shelter, where they have access to enough nutritious food. And so in contrast, as mentioned by the police in their presentation, the police recently in Halifax have been seen as supporting the destruction of emergency shelters and policing grocery stores. So we know that increasing costs are impacting everyone, and addressing these challenges requires investment in safety promoting, community building resources, and not increases to the municipal budget for policing. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Good timing. Now call upon Colin May, followed by Patricia White, and then Simon Landry.
Colin May, Dahlia Street, Dartmouth. Former member of Dartmouth City Council, former member of the Dartmouth Police Commission. I've attended HRM Police Commission meetings for more than a decade. My father was a detective back in Britain, and the idea of, or rather the notion of walking down a railway track, picking up bits of people who'd thrown themselves under a train in order to commit suicide ensured that I didn't follow him. What you're hearing tonight is about a breakdown in civil society across the country, not just here. It's a breakdown because of governments of all three parties have neglected the basic amenities of life in favor of the most popular two-word phrase of the present Prime Minister, the middle class. Now, I'll openly admit to voting Conservative. In fact, I've voted everybody but Liberal. I have to say that transitioning to better social services in order to alleviate the pressures upon policing require increased spending. If you want to do it more rapidly, all you have to do is go down to the Minister of Justice and tell him that you no longer wish to receive the almost $4 million that the province has given you each year for the past 10 years for boots on the street. There's even more of that because it goes to other municipalities. If that's what you want, and it appears to be that there's a number of people who want to see increased social services, then in the present climate, I'd suggest that we need federal and provincial governments and municipal governments that look closer at the budgets and start crossing out what I call the nice things and replacing the spending on the essential things. And for all the years we've lived in Dartmouth since 1974, and to see Geary Street, to see the homelessness. I had a career that took me all over the world. Much of those years, I never traveled with a passport. I went where I was told to go. I've seen some of the worst poverty you can imagine, but I never thought I would see what I see today. Never. It's a disgrace to this community, it's a disgrace to the province, and a disgrace to the country. And it's about time the nice middle-class things, and I'm 78 today. I regard myself as middle class now. But I never thought that I would see what I see. And so now, once a week, my wife goes in the grocery stores, buys groceries, and either puts them in the Christ Church, which is just a short walk from our house, either puts them in there or takes them to the food bank. So I speak specifically to the two remaining council members here. When you go through the city's budget, you need to go through there, identify the nice things. I can send you a list. You need to see some of the nice things and cut them out. And you need to tell the province that the money that they're giving to support they give this HRM over $3 million a year, and then they give other money to to the RCMP to support the Additional Officers Program, which was brought in over a decade ago because of the very high rate of violent crime, the number of murders. I've gone through all the data. I've spoken to the council before on this matter. Fortunately, the homicide rate has declined, but it's still too far where it is. And that's where the money needs to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Calling on Patricia White. And then Simon Landry and Victoria Levac. There we go.
Hello. My name is Simon Landry. I live in Bedford South. I'm a father, and I'm part of the Acadian community. I'm against the
Sorry, excuse me. I'm going to need you to just adjust that a bit and there we go.
Hello. Oh, no, it's too high. All right, so I'm against the increase in police budget. I want to share with you how I explained to my 2-year-old boy why I wouldn't be joining him tonight to put him to sleep. So this morning he said, well, the city pays for things like police and libraries, and now the police wants more money. But Papa thinks we should give more money to people who are very sad or who don't have homes. He seems to understand this. The Halifax Board of Police Commissioners report on defunding the police is one of the many reports that makes it clear that this increase in the police's budget will not move us towards safer neighborhoods or more just application of the law. Very specifically, what will move us forward is taking the defunding the police report seriously and providing funding towards its implementation. Look, we all want the same thing, to live in safer and more just communities. And the steps are outlined in the report. Now we just need some courage and leadership to follow through on those recommendations. And I know it can be scary to do something new and different, but I hope you'll hear me and the other people here today and reject the proposed budget increase and take the steps we need to truly build a better future. And just before I leave, I want to point out that I'm an employed 6'2" white man with a PhD who's never interacted with the justice system. And I'm nervous to be standing here sharing my opinion in front of so many police. So it's easy to imagine how someone who doesn't look like me would feel around them. So shout out to those who are here and have spoken today. And I think that's something that's worth reflecting on. Thank you.
Thank you. Call upon Victoria Levac, Nancy Hunter, and Marula Vale.
Yeah, it's okay. I have a very loud voice, but this should work. Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
We good? We good? Okay.
Good.
So my name is Victoria Levac, and I am in District 7. Lived there for about 2 months now. Before that, I lived in a nursing home against my will on Princess Cove. And I would just like to echo, like many people here, I am completely against this increase. In fact, given the fact that we have a very detailed, common sense report by Dr. Jones and her colleagues, the fact that they're asking for more money is completely ridiculous. We've told them we don't want this. The people have spoken. We do not trust police. We do not want more police in our communities. As somebody with a disability, and due to the fact that this meeting was not virtual, I had to scramble to get a ride. And luckily, I was able to get a bus. And luckily, if I wasn't, I am financially stable enough to have purchased a cab ride. It is not lost on me that by speaking here today, I do not only speak for myself, but for the members of my community that could not sit before you today. I am a middle-class white woman, and I used to believe that the police were there to protect us. I know now that that is not true. The police are here to protect white, able-bodied men, mostly, with money. And I don't have those things. I am a survivor of rape, and the police did nothing to help me. They sent 2 big male officers to assess me while I was bleeding on my bed from a violent assault. This did not make me feel safe. I've worked with the homeless community for about 2 years now. After the egregious atrocities that were committed by Chief Gonzalez's office on August 18th, 2021. It was then that I realized the police are not here to protect. They are here to enforce the will of the elite. If we really want to save our communities, we need less police and more funding for mental health services, as well as increases in access to food and other things that have already been spoken about here today. It is not lost on me that if I was to interact with police and during one of my many mental health crises, I would more likely be shot than helped. When I see police, I automatically become afraid, almost to the point of panic, because if they're not going to go after me, what if they go after one of my friends who simply needs support and care that these police are not equipped to provide? These people say they get in this to help people, and my question is, to help whom? My humble ask is if at the very least you're not going to listen to the will of the people and defund and detask, that you at the very least do not approve this egregiously disgusting ask for more money, for more officers with guns. I understand that the police have mental health issues. Sir, your officers make 6 figures. They can pay for that service like everyone else. You are not special. Your officers are not special. They are citizens just like the rest of us. So if you expect us to pay, then they should pay as well. I humbly ask that you please listen to the will of the people which you have been chosen to represent. And for once in history, I hope that the people in power do not get everything they ask for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to call Nancy Hunter, Marula Vale, and Willa Oaks in that order.
Hi, my name is Nancy Hunter. I live in District 11. District 11 is Spryfield and surrounding areas. Spryfield is, I believe, it was at one point had the highest poverty rates, I think, in the city, possibly the province. Even nationally, I think it made the list. I don't know how many people here on the commission or in the police do the grocery shopping in the family, but I do my grocery shopping at No Frills in Spryfield. And you only have to go there once, and if you pay attention and you look around, you will see people who are struggling, who are making decisions about basics to feed themselves and their family. You are seeing people give up small enjoyments in life. You are seeing people work with the same budget, the low budget that they've always had because we've underfunded so many things in the city for so long, but having to make choices. And so it's a bit of, I might want to use the word gall to ask for $6 million in this time. There's a lot of things I wanted to say, but a lot of people have said them probably much better than I have. There's a lot of subject experts here. But I want to say that I was part of, I think there was about 25 of us who did this last year. So I want to speak to something that hasn't been spoken about, and that is the legitimacy of public consultations. So I've been involved in a few public consultations on different issues over my life. And among many people, I'm trying to use diplomatic terms, but it's not unusual for people to call HRM public consultations a sham. And the reason that is because unless our input is actually taken, then there is no meaningful input in a public consultation. And I think that's what happened to us last year. There was about 25 of us, including, I think, 2 ex-Mounties. And we all said similar things to people that are saying here, great information. And we all said, put a halt. And following that, there was very little discussion about the points. There was a commissioner or 2 who tried to get some of our points in, but mostly they were ignored by the commission. And not only were they ignored, there seemed to be no good rigorous conversation about the points we raised, but also the recommendation, even though it was unanimous, I believe, amongst the 25 of us, that there was still a recommendation to give the police the increased budget that they asked for. So I want to be I hope everyone here follows this up, and I hope the commission listens to us. I also want to say that one of the things I said last time was that I'm very interested in democratic oversight and accountability of police. There's lots of other issues that other people have brought up. But one thing I am an expert in is I'm a white Nova Scotian of many generations. I grew up in a conservative family, a family that believed if you were Protestant, you voted conservative, and if you were liberal, you voted Catholic. And the definition of a mixed marriage was a marriage between a Catholic and a Protestant. So I know what the cultural history is in the context we're working with. I know Nova Scotia culture very well. And right now, we have never questioned police budgets. We have always given complete faith to policing, and always there has been a very close relationship between politicians and police, and it's not been a good relationship. If you want to look it up, there's lots of good stuff in the Marshall Inquiry about the relationship between police and politicians. It's a very mutually beneficial relationship. And so we have to stop, and we have to start to analyze, and we have to start to have rigor of the Police Board of Commissioners asking good, tough questions. We don't know what this $85,000 current budget, we don't know much about it. We lack in transparency, and we make all kinds of assumptions based on this kind of culture. And so I would ask the Board of Commissioners to be rigorous, to demand accountability, to demand transparency, and say no to this increase.
Thank you. Marula Vale.
Hi there. Can you hear me? Sorry. Thank you.
I think he needs to stop fiddling with it. They vented.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Okay, good afternoon. My name is Maura Vale. I am a resident of Chipuktuk, Halifax, and I am here today to oppose the proposed $6 million increase to the Halifax Regional Police budget and to articulate defunding the police as a critical act of public safety and social well-being. Defunding the police asks us to consider whether there are better, more effective options for preventing and addressing crime and social harm. We have an abundance of research that demonstrates the inadequacy and inefficacy of the police in both preventing and solving crime. Over 50 years of crime data shows only 2% of crimes end in conviction. According to data collected over the past 60 years, spending more on policing does not lower the crime rate, and spending less on policing does not increase it. These are facts we need to sit with. When we recognize that police do not reduce or prevent crime, we must also recognize that there are many alternative social services and measures that are proven to prevent crime. Emergency financial assistance for people experiencing economic insecurity has been shown to reduce arrests for violent crime by 50%. Improved healthcare is proven to significantly reduce homicide, burglary, assault, robbery, and vehicle theft. Urban design can be similarly impactful. Public spaces and infrastructure such as parks, sidewalks, bike paths, and streetlights have all been proven to improve public safety in ways that police do not. We have a plethora of municipal services that are proven to be more effective and efficient at preventing and responding to crime and community-level harm than the police. We need to redirect funds that are currently used to fund the police to these crucial social services. When I make this recommendation, I also want to recognize that, according to a 30-year analysis of police service delivery and costing, police resources allocated on the basis of residential population are inadequate to the tasks police are expected to accomplish. This report acknowledges that police are not capable of safely and effectively performing the full extent of their duties. Defunding the police therefore requires that we detask the police. Police are performing tasks and functions that could be more efficiently and effectively performed by other institutions and agencies. It is not fiscally or socially responsible to increase the HRP budget when we have better solutions at hand, especially in a municipality in the midst of a devastating housing crisis where nearly 1 in 5 households cannot afford the food they need. I therefore pose this question to the board today. How can we most effectively and efficiently keep our communities safe using municipal resources? The facts tell us that police do not keep our communities safe. The facts tell us that we have access to better, more effective avenues to prevent and address the root causes of crime. Police are not only systematically failing to prevent harm, but are demonstrably traumatizing our communities, especially our Black and Indigenous community members, our unhoused community members, our disabled community members, and our community members experiencing mental health crises. HRM needs to reinvest in safety promoting, community building social services and resources that address the root causes of crime. We need to redirect municipal resources to public services that are shown to promote the health and well-being of our residents. Defunding and detasking the police is an evidence-based strategy to preventing and addressing harm within our communities. The Board of Police Commissioners has the responsibility and authority to act in accordance with this evidence. To do otherwise would be gross negligence and an egregious misuse of power to the detriment of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to call for Jen Kang. Sorry, did I miss you? What's your name? Willa Oaks. Oh, thank you. Yes, Willa Oaks. I made my notes in the wrong name. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Willa Oaks, and I'm a resident of Halifax. I am here today to oppose the $6 million budget increase for the Halifax Regional Police. But before I speak on the budget increase itself, I would like to express my outrage at the inaccessibility of this meeting. It is highly unnecessary to have this meeting in person without the virtual accommodations that have been available in previous years. With COVID cases spiking and cold and flu season being in full effect, along with it beginning at 4:30 on a Monday, this in-person meeting is entirely inaccessible to so many community members whose voices deserve to be heard at this public consultation. Onto the budget. with multiple reports and case studies that prove that increasing police budgets does not reduce crime, it is hard to understand the justification for a $6 million budget increase that the HRP is looking for. In a city experiencing a devastating housing crisis and cost of living crisis, it would be irresponsible to allocate more public funds to the HRP, given that the police are neither reducing nor solving either crises. While 74% of Halifax Regional Police employees make over $100,000 per year, the people they police are living with one of the lowest minimum wages in the country, and the median household income is less than $60,000 per year. While the HRP are overfunded, underproductive, and lurking around our grocery stores, there are city services that are being chronically underfunded despite the fact that they are proven to reduce crime and improve citizens' quality of life more effectively than the police. These services are left to rely heavily on volunteers and community donations, while public funds get poured into police budgets. Instead of funding the over-policing of our neighborhoods, the municipality should be investing in and improving our city's infrastructure to create more accessible and effective public transit, urban green spaces, and safer roads. Public funds should be allocated to organizations which provide accessible housing, mental health services, accessible arts and culture programs, youth sports and rec programs, libraries, and other community spaces, just to name a few. All of which are ways the municipality can tangibly support its citizens' well-being. To conclude, there are so many services in our city whose frontline workers are proven to provide life-saving care to our communities. These people are being burnt out due to lack of funding and resources, while the programs they provide are at full capacity despite a growing need. This $6 million of public money could allow for these existing services to flourish and expand to support the growing needs of our communities in ways they are not able to, while the municipal government chooses to chronically underfund them and allocate money to ineffective, harmful police officers.
Thank you very much. I'll call on Jen Kang. Excuse me.
Yes. Can you hear me through this mask?
Yes.
Okay. With my toque raised because apparently it was essential to see my eyebrows. All right. First, I must repeat prior comments and express disgust at how ableist and discriminatory this in-person 4:30 p.m. meeting without a virtual component is. Many people work in flexible schedules and or have massive financial, tactical barriers to transportation and dependent care. The tools for inclusion via Zoom or other media are affordable, if not free. And by now you must already have them at your disposal, and yet you choose not to use them and choose to exclude people who can't come easily in person. I therefore have no faith in your ability to wisely use resources for their greatest good. Not one single cent should go to any organization that has been repeatedly proven racist and deadly. If anyone feels the need to clear their throat, now might be the time. I will echo and amplify what Kate said. If the board approves this increase, they become complicit in violence against the vulnerable. Unless you're using it to find every missing and murdered Indigenous person in Canada, in that case, you can have it. Your shiny new remotely operated vehicle, cost-shared helicopter, and drone would all do well to accomplish this task. We need suicide prevention and intervention more than we need shiny trucks with metal shovels on their bumpers. Making police supervise people involuntarily committed to psychiatric services in hospitals is definitely a terrible idea and bad use of your skills. Aggressive men with batons and guns increase the risk of harm to at-risk people. The best case scenario in that situation is discomfort, fear, and suspicion. I say that as a trained suicide prevention worker and someone with firsthand lived experience. If you're going to continue to push for a police-specific psychologist, I hope they do and publish detailed peer-reviewed studies on all the flawed reasons why power-hungry abusers and rapists self-select for the job of frontline officer. Give the over $7 million to groups that actually support the vulnerable and marginalized of our society. and use the money you already have to train your force or uniformed resources, as you so quaintly depersonified them, to stop using brute force and be less of a force and more of a team that instead use and exercise their capacities for compassion, patience, understanding, and empathy. It costs little and is immensely valuable, priceless even. Do it. Also, stop giving paid leave to officers who acted in bad faith and did damage to others. Instead, consider banning them from the team and from any future employment in any similar position of power and authority, such as librarian, private security, or our broken prison systems. Police have power. You abuse it, you lose it. Thank you for this opportunity to express myself. If anyone here needs help making better use of their existing budget to make it closer approximate perhaps to the still exorbitant $600 onboarding cost elsewhere versus the $924 for HRP, I have years of experience living in poverty and making do with less. I was an Army cadet and did just fine with a uniform handed down to me from a past participant. I led fundraisers for environmental groups selling secondhand t-shirts printed with logos from a local company. They cost $5 and sold for $20. I'm available for facilitation at the comparatively low cost of $60 per hour. Warm regards, Jen Kang, they, them, non-binary human, District 9. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to now call on Sean McGilvery, followed by Abby Hodson and Ifo Iked. Hope I pronounced that right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not close enough to this mic, am I? Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Sean McGilvery. I'm a resident of District 3, solidly middle class, and I'm here to speak against this budget increase, as is, as far as I can tell, nearly everyone else here. I'm here out of a sense, I'm a bit surprised, to be honest. There's a few things that surprise me about the situation right now. There's three things specifically. The first surprise is to hear about resource shortages at HRP. The second is to hear that the proposed solution is a budget increase. And the third is the solicitation of public comment on this issue. And I'll come back to that later. So, as has been noted by other speakers here, when it comes time for example, a contractor and the employee of HRP, or HRM, I should say, to shake his little tail feather and take a chainsaw to the only shelter somebody has, when it's time to form a phalanx of cops around that person, the resources appear. When it's time to shut down a protest at the Eisner wetland and bundle a few older women off in police cars, the resources appear. So it is, and when it's time also for near round-the-clock surveillance of homeless encampments, again, the resources appear. So it is perhaps a little surprising to me to hear that there's a resource shortage. Further, knowing all the work that's been done on the detasking report, and that we've heard ample feedback from all kinds of members of the community, from all sorts of disciplines, all sorts of walks of life. We got, ex-Mounties and people that have worked in victim services, that this Board of Commissioners, or its past incarnation last year, have heard. Knowing that all that work exists, knowing that it has been done, it does come as a surprise. And knowing that, and I think that a lot of people in this room would agree, actually, I think most of us agree that the police mandate is too broad, that we use police for things we ought not to use police for, and that the resources are not in place, as we've heard, for successful outcomes in the deployment of those resources. So knowing all the work that's been done to provide alternatives, to provide different ways and means of spending money, of deploying resources in ways which do not put the police in conflict with the community and which create better and more equitable outcomes for HRM citizens, it is also surprising to me to hear that the proposed answer is a $6 million budget ask. And I am surprised further to be asked for comment. I participated, as some folks did, in a session not unlike this one last year, when, again, dozens of people took their time to stand before you and relate their concerns and to say, I don't want this budget increase, for whatever their reasons were, and it was a variety of reasons. And after all that, after a nearly unanimous consensus from every speaker who got up, the Board of Police Commissioners disregarded all of that and approved the budget increase anyway and sent it to council, and even council sent it back. So I do hope, and I am here in that hope, in good faith, that this time, that the time that HRM residents have contributed to bring their knowledge and their experience here for the benefit of this governing body, it is my sincere hope that this time those voices will be heard and the information they provided will be acted upon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now call on Abby Hodson, Ifo Akid, and Colin Elsons to follow.
Hi, thank you, Chair. My name is Abby, and I'm a resident of Halifax. First, again, I'll reiterate the note that with all that we've learned during the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting should have a virtual option for the people to speak and if they're unable to attend. So yeah, I'm appalled by the proposed budget increase that is being requested. I strongly oppose any increase to policing budgets. Last year, they received a budget of $89.2 million from the city. And I don't believe investing more in the police will do anything for our community. I believe it will have the opposite effect and perpetuate the harm caused by police on a regular basis. The police have enacted harm on many members of our community and continue to actively criminalize neighbors who are unhoused. This money should be going into community-led initiatives, subsidized and affordable housing, and an investment in detasking police and retasking more appropriate community service providers. The last few years have had consistent calls to defund the police, with many well-known and respected community members bringing action plans and community-centered strategies to move forward. This includes work like the report Defunding the Police, Defining the Way Forward for the HRM, by subcommittee to define defunding the police. You have the information, you have the tools, it's time to apply them. I oppose this proposed budget increase and echo the calls for defunding the police and reinvesting in community. Thank you for listening and actively applying our concerns as you make this decision.
Thank you very much. Now call Ifo Akid, then Colin Elson and John Wimberly.
Good evening. My name is Ifo. I'm Isoko from the Niger Delta region of West Africa, and my ancestors kind of came here once upon a time, and some of my cousins were kidnapped and brought here. And when some of them fled, they had people that they call police to chase after them. So the concept of trying to fund people that historically have been hunting down Africans and First Nations people by the city of Halifax that claims that Black Lives Matter seems kind of absurd to me. Since I'm Isoko, I'm going to ask a few questions and I'm going to tell a few stories, but I'll be really, really quick. So let's just imagine that you open up a new restaurant, so you hire a chef, and the chef says, "Wow, this is awesome. Thanks for this 100K plus salary. But I don't know how to cook. I don't know how to cut onions. I don't know how to do any of these things. But I have a proposal for you. Can you give me $6 million so I can hire more incompetent chefs like me?" Would anybody in their right mind consider actually that proposal? So I'm flabbergasted because they say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. We've been funding people who've been terrorizing Black and brown people and homeless and people who are experiencing homelessness in this city for a long time. Why are we still funding them? Why is there a proposal that's supposed to be about defunding the police and the conclusion of that proposal is increasing funding? That doesn't make any sense. I'm a computer scientist. I see no logic in this decision. I think the only logical response from this board and from the city is to actively defund the police. Figure out exactly how much money they need to take out of this police. Fire the chief, because the chief was in Hamilton. And while they were in Hamilton, they were actively going after people they considered leftist, and they were also actively going after Black people. So if you actually care about Black people like the city claims that it does, and if you actually care about the poor like you claim like you do, because talk is cheap. We want the same amount of funding that is aggressively given to police without question, to be aggressively given to people who are dealing with issues towards eradicating poverty, towards eradicating homelessness, towards providing affordable housing, towards providing bus fare so people can get to places. Maybe pay for Zoom so that people can actually connect to stuff like this so that we can have community input. So I am deeply, 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 deeply disappointed. First, I'm disappointed on the police for the audacity to actually ask for more money when you have failed to do your job. That's the first one. And then secondly, I'm disappointed in this board for deciding to actually accept that. That is ludicrous. It makes no sense. So I am just concerned. I was actually pleased that when the chief of police talked about commitment to providing bias-free policing, that there were some people who laughed. I thought it was a comedy jam because that was laughable. And it's also interesting that the RCMP talked about a lot of things, but they hardly ever mentioned the citizenry. They hardly ever mentioned the well-being of the people. They hardly ever mentioned the effect of trauma, of decades of dealing with this. I've had multiple police officers pull guns at my head. So the fact that I'm still alive is a miracle. So I'm also going to suggest that in the future, when you have this sort of meetings, you make sure that the people who are historically killing people that look like me do not come to this meeting with weapons, because it's not safe for us. If you care about trauma-informed. What's also laughable is that the RCMP also talked about their concern for trauma-informed policing and dealing with their officers. Meanwhile, we have records of massive abuses of fellow RCMP officers who are Black, brown, and also the women who are police officers with the RCMP. And they have filed lawsuits because the RCMP has refused to actually deal with it. So the question, the logical question, is if you're opening a restaurant, why would you, one, hire a chef that already told you, I'm incompetent because I can't deal with mental health issues, I can't deal with Black people, I can't deal with brown people, I can't deal with poor people. The only people that they seem to be able to know how to deal with are the extremely wealthy. We only got 30 seconds, so I want to put another proposal for the city to think about. All the libraries in the predominantly marginalized and poor communities in this province, in the city, are closed on Sundays. Where the kids need it, they're closed, and the bus doesn't run well. Meanwhile, the libraries that are in the richest parts of the richest neighborhoods are open all the time for people who actually don't even need it all the time because they have the funds. So this is systemic discrimination based on race and based on class. So we need to get our act together and start actually acting like the city claims that it wants to act. I look forward to the day when I can be proud of this city. Let's do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do want to clarify for anyone who's in attendance or listening that no decision has been debated or made for the budgetary request from the HRP to date. So I just want to make sure that it was clarified. Thank you.
There. I guess while I'm waiting for that presentation to be brought up, I had a few interesting notes when talking about the proposed increase for police budget beyond 2023, and that was the rent cap in the province is set to expire by the end of this year. And as I believe many in the audience here may know, police have seemingly been ill-equipped to deal with folks who are unhoused in this province. And so my suggestion just off the bat would be that we should use these funds, direct them towards, if not temporary shelters, more affordable housing units. As again, from my understanding, police are not well-equipped to deal with these folks. Sorry, just to clarify, this presentation, while not seemingly completely relevant to the municipality, does have to deal with supports within Nova Scotia in general. And I think by comparison, I can try to emphasize that we should be spending more on community supports as opposed to corrections and policing. So if you could skip through the first couple of slides, they just discuss the role of the DOJ and the DCS, which are Department of Justice and the Department of Community Services in Nova Scotia. DOJ is dealing with incarceration, corrections. They have a lot of coordination with policing, I do believe, and the Department of Community Services, which, in my understanding, would serve some of the less fortunate folks in Nova Scotia. And some of the numbers here may startle you, but if you'd like to continue forward, I'll just take a look at some of these. So these are sourced from novascotia.ca's website. As you can see, it's sourced at the bottom from just basic employment income assistance rates. And the income assistance rate for a person who may be unhoused is considered standard household rate, essentials, and that's in brackets toward the center left there. If you can see under household composition, all of that is $380 per month. And I would question whether anyone here believes they could do with $380 per month. And then consider that as to being how much some of these unhoused folks may be receiving, and consider how much is being spent on policing these unhoused folks. Sorry, if you could continue to the next slide. These numbers just discuss the cost of incarceration in 2019, 2020. Source is Research Planning and Information Management from the Nova Scotia Department of Justice. In 2019 to 2020, as we see towards the bottom left column, the cost to incarcerate a single adult in Nova Scotia was $323 per day. If that number sounds familiar, that's only $57 less that an unhoused person would receive per month. And I think most interestingly in this slide, figure 3 provides that the average daily cost per adult in custody based on actual expenditures by correctional services for adults in custody during the period of 2015, 2016 to 2019, 2020, that average daily cost per adult in custody had increased by substantial amounts. It was 14% higher from the 2015-16 rates in 2018-19, and it was 27% higher in the following years of 2019, 2020. So I'm wondering why it is that we're tying police budgets and the Department of Justice budgets to the point of inflation, while not really tying the community services realm to the point of inflation as well. And if you'd like, I think the next slide over also shows from novascotia.ca's website, corrections key indicator reports. In 2020 to 2021, $470 per day was the cost to incarcerate an adult in a Nova Scotia provincial jail. That's absurd. And I would challenge anyone, again, anyone in here, to reason why we should be spending more per day to incarcerate anyone than we do on anyone who is unhoused. And final slide here is just a direct comparison. Again, if you look at income assistance rates on the left as compared to cost of incarceration on the right, I think the discrimination is very clear and it's intentional. And rather than just placing all the blame on police, I would blame it on counselors. I would blame it on politicians within the provincial government who do have a duty and responsibility towards citizens of this province and of Halifax to actually make sure that we're spending in the correct places. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now call on John Wimberly, followed by Richard Knowles and Debbie Finney.
Good evening. I had some prepared remarks, although at this point, things have been covered. I mean, people have heard similar notions over and over again. Obviously, money can be spent to prevent crime instead of increasing policing. As Kate McDonald said earlier, even if we didn't redirect the money, just doing anything else with it is probably better. Right now, there's just went to use the washroom. It's unhoused people just sleeping in this building until it closes for the night. I mean, the need is immediate. So people have heard from folks here, heard of the same thing over and over. I guess looking around this group, the I wonder just, I guess, where people are at, because, I mean, this isn't the first time you've heard it either. I mean, presumably you've heard these numbers before too, about incarceration versus costs of policing. So, like, I guess just for the commissioners right now, how many people, like, show of hands, who's planning to vote against this? Or who's planning to not recommend this? Anybody? I don't see a single hand up. So everyone's planning to recommend that we increase the police budget.
Commissioner, I don't.
Speaker is way off topic, making accusations about the counselors, what the commissioners, what they might do, what they're doing, what they're thinking, what they may think in the future, is quite frankly bizarre and insulting. There's been no decision to be made. Madam Chair made that clear a half an hour ago.
Thank
To
you.
the chair,
And-
to the chair, I believe I asked people what they were
Excuse me.
thinking.
Just one moment, please.
course.
Yes, you have the floor, and we have, as commissioners, we have the ability to clarify anything that perhaps was suggested to the public that it was in fact not accurate, certainly from a board perspective, and that's what I did, so I will do that again when you're complete.
Since there is the ability to go back and forth, I would like to hear.
No, there is no ability to go back and forth. That was a point of privilege. We don't, excuse me, we don't really have that, but in Commissioner Giles just didn't know that part, which is fine. There is no back and forth. You have an opportunity to speak and share your perspective. If any commissioners have clarification questions to you, we would offer the floor to that. And as the chair, I feel it's incumbent of me to just express to you that there is no decision that has been made, no deliberation that has been made. So there would be no commissioner that would be in the position to actually answer that question even at the end of the session. So if you could continue with your presentation, not sure where your time is now, but that's the clarification that I can offer.
Obviously, I'm speaking against the budget increase. To think of what one can say that has not already been said, other than to point out that, I'm certainly in the boat that spending on anything other than the police would be valuable. In my neighborhood, when there are sirens, I go out to see what's going on. And often that's to keep an eye on the police. I've walked out my door hearing sirens and seen kids in my neighborhood, African Nova Scotian kids, terrified because the police are nearby. We're talking to one kid a couple of years ago now, lives across the street from me, who was terrified because his sister was a block away where those sirens were. And he was concerned that his sister was in danger. And she was. I went down there, and it was a group of young African Nova Scotian girls being harassed by the police. They were doing nothing. They were down in what the police call Dummyville. This kind of harassment is day in and day out. I mean, I'm a well-spoken white man, and I mostly am ignored by the police. Though certainly coming here is a scary thing because I know the police target people that disagree with them. I've had friends deal with that. So I don't deal with the police that much, but I'll tell you, when I walk down the street with my friends that are Black or Indigenous, I'm treated completely differently. Cops menace us, watch us, scream at us to stop walking down the street, to come and talk to them, to ask us where we're going. I mean, there's police here that do this. This is just the normal operating procedure of this police department. And again, presumably everyone here has heard this before. These decisions are made, presumably feeling like that is an okay way to move forward. It's incredibly frustrating. I mean, I don't know what you expect people to do, how people can maintain their sanity when they have these people menacing them all the time. I mean, again, I'm mostly left alone. even then there's a psychological burden. But my God, like what we are doing to people, the constant trauma that we are subjecting them to. I mean, I don't know how people could hear these stories and just, shake the Etch-a-Sketch and remove this all from your minds. And I don't expect much. I mean, I've mostly stopped going to public meetings because people are not listened to in my experience. Once in a while, but pretty rarely. And I expect this will be the same. I gotta say, just please, for God's sake, do better.
Thank you. Now call on Richard Knowles.
Good evening, thank you. I came for a very specific purpose tonight because the police are a little part of the problem. I think a much bigger part of the problem, quite frankly, is city council generally. So I'll just toss this on the table and you can see what you'd like to do with it. There's been a huge amount of money that's being spent in the last 2 or 3 years on cluttering the city with all sorts of impediments to traffic with the notion of traffic calming. There's concrete that's spread all around corners, forcing people to take wide turns. There's all sorts of things. City plow trucks are getting smashed up trying to clear snow. Places like Hollis Street have part of the street cordoned off to look after 1 or 2 bicycles a day that happen to go down Hollis Street. There are whole lanes of traffic around the city that are being cordoned off against normal traffic use to allow buses with 1 or 2 passengers on to go up there, down there once or twice a day or an hour. It's what this has to do with is the way the city is spending money on how they're directing traffic and how we're dealing with traffic in the city. There are bicycles all over the road. There are bicycles all over the road at night with no lights on. There's no license plates on those bicycles. There's no way of doing anything. If a bicycle runs into you and scratches the side of your car, you can't do anything about it because that bicycle is just free to do what he wants. We have people in little electric vehicles driving all over the road and all over the sidewalks. Nobody's stopping and nobody's doing a damn thing. Cars are driving around with their license plates blacked out, their front windows blacked out in front of the B columns. They're not supposed to be. You're not supposed to have any pieces of saran wrap over your license plate. There are people driving around talking on the phones all the time. Now, this is a police problem. A lot of it, because you can put all the signs up about speeding. You can put up all the signs you want. You can do everything on the road you want. But if there is no police presence on the road to keep people from driving like idiots around with loud mufflers and talking on the phone, and once in a mean little while, put up a speed trap for them. I haven't seen one in the city for 2 years now. I drive down Quinpool Road every day. Once, twice, 3 times. I put about 20,000 kilometers on my car around the city every year doing my little bits and pieces. And I never see a speed trap anywhere. So what is the police department doing with the city's money? And why is the city wasting money on concrete barriers to slow the traffic down when there's nobody doing law enforcement in the city? That's my big question. So what I would suggest is this has nothing to do with defund the police, which is a lovely statement that got coined somewhere in the United States. What we need to do is right fund the whole city. Stop spreading the money around the streets doing nothing. Stop painting funny things on the streets, which don't mean anything to anybody except a very small percentage of the population. Make somebody in politics feel good or do something. I don't know what it's doing for traffic. It's not doing a damn thing. So, City of Halifax, smarten up, get with the program, spend our money wisely, and that's all of our money, everybody in this room, whether you're a policeman or not. It's taxes that we're spending, and we're watching this money going all over the place. smashing up snowplows, wrecking up people's rims on cars when they can't see where they're going on the road because of snow or leaves in the fall. It's not funny, and it needs to be taken care of. And that's far more, it's just as important as doing anything with the police do what the police do. And I understand all the social justice things and everything else. That's all very good stuff. But the city's got to look at the way they're spending money. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Before we proceed, we're approaching 5 minutes before our allotted time will expire. We did have concerns with quorum. I want to revisit that now before any further presenters are asked to come to the podium. So commissioners, we have an option of, there's 6 more people who have identified to speak. So that's a minimum of 30 minutes. We may have a few more. We won't know until we ask at the end of this session. What's the will of the commission? To extend or to finish this today and consider another day for the remainders?
I heard stop at 7:30, but if it was another half an hour, I'd say. If it's gonna be another hour, and then you have the quorum issues.
Yeah, so I'd like to just get a show of hands perhaps of how many more speakers are identified to speak. I have, perhaps clerk can see, I can't see everyone. I have Debbie Finney, Samantha Mully, I think that's what it is, Hannah Wood, Kaylee McDonald, Mila McKay, and Denise Karos.
That's Khosrowshahi.
Thank you. You say it way better than I ever could have. 5, so that would be 25.
Would you mind if I said something?
Commissioner Critchley?
Thanks so much, Madam Chair. I mean, I think it should be obvious kind of where we are in the meeting, that, you know, the board needs an opportunity to deliberate. If there's a need to end the meeting at 8 o'clock, things like that deliberation is not going to occur tonight. I don't think that anyone wants to see it done in an overly hasty manner. I mean, to the point about, so I guess what I'm going to suggest respectfully, Chair Kent, is that I'd be happy to hear the remaining presenters. Obviously, people have spent a lot of time here. I'm very mindful of the fact that the public, there was a long period of time after the meeting started where, you know, the public were sitting, hearing other information. I think it's very valuable, but also an important in-camera session that we required. But I guess what I'm going to be proposing at the end of the presentations, if we can get through those presentations, is a motion from the floor. And I would look to my colleagues for that 2/3 requirement for a motion from the floor to defer the discussion of the motion before the board. So that's the motion with respect to the budget. And also, in addition, a motion to permit our subsequent meeting where we do have that deliberation to be a virtual one, to, you know, in light of the very valid concerns around meeting accessibility, ones that were raised. And I think, you know, as best as possible, the board has a legislative duty to act as a conduit for the community. And we need to ensure that we've met that duty. So I guess what I'm going to be proposing is that we hear from the remaining presenters, defer our deliberation on the budget, and then also deferring that, allow for further kind of virtual consultation as necessary at the next meeting.
Thank you. I think this, with Commissioner Giles' hard stop but a reconsideration of another half an hour, I think is it was just a quick yes and nod whether or not we can proceed with that. So we'll have a motion on the floor to extend for half an hour. Thank you. And we'll consider some of what Commissioner Critchley spoke to, I think, at agenda review when we're looking at what the next procedural piece for the next meeting would be. Thank you. So now call Debbie Finney.
Public speaker, I'm really not. I didn't really mean to sign up to speak, but I'm actually glad that it worked out this way.
Okay, so just pull the mic towards you just a little so we,
Do that.
there we go.
Everything I've heard today, actually, I'm quite confused. As a board, is it not directive to what the chief commissioner does, is my thought. That's what a board does. I'm not understanding in the new world that we're in why more police cars, and I don't mean any disrespect because I do not want to be in a world that does not have police officers. There's what I can tell you. I own a bar. But the world has changed. We now have a great deal of mental health. When did it become the police officer's job to be a mental health person? I'm confused on what a cop is supposed to be now. As the board of the police, why would a cop be standing in the hospital with anybody? Like, where did the job change for the police officer? When did that become law, that their job was bigger than what it used to be? I'm over half a century old. I've been raised to respect police officers. Get me no wrong. There are some bad seeds in every group. But I think there has to be a direction on what the police officer's job is now. We're expecting way too much out of people. In confusion, when you do not know what your job is anymore, it's just got loaded on you. Of course, you're going to need more of this. But though some things are not your job. So as a board, why are we not collectively figuring out what the police job is? And if a police needs another organization of people, a doctor, a whatever, why are we not somehow joining that together? I'm really confused on that. So I hope the board looks at that scenario. I know as a bar owner now, I have to pay attention to the mental health, how much drugs people use, which is something we never had to do 38 years ago. If you were intoxicated by alcohol, you were intoxicated. All of a sudden now my job is to, are you intoxicated with a Valium, a street drug? So my job has changed. Alcohol and gaming has told us that. Did somebody tell police officers their job changed? Because I didn't hear about it publicly. And maybe it's just because I'm not paying attention. But that's something I would like us to look at before we just beat up police officers. I believe we need them. We need everybody to get a little bit better at it, have a little bit more compassion in this new world, and get the bad seeds a little bit more education. But to beat them all up, I'm nuts over that. I don't believe that $1 million or 6 million, 9 million is the answer. But I do believe that there's something different that's going on here than police just needing money. They need to have a better job description. That's my thoughts.
Thank you. For clarification's sake, I'd just like to respond to the very first point that you said around what is the role of the board and the police. The provincial legislation, the Police Act, does describe and creates the mandate for the police services. So that I would encourage you to take a look at that if you want a clear understanding. The other piece that it legislates is that the council, Halifax Regional Council for HRP, creates a board that has oversight on a larger piece, but we have no on policy around focus, but we have no legislative authority to direct the chief on operational side of what there's no back and forth, I'm afraid. Yeah. So if you'd like some more understanding of that, feel free to reach out to us, but I just want to be clear that that is the case.
Thank you.
Samantha Mully. I think it's Mully. I can't quite tell by the writing. No? Okay. Hannah Wood, followed by Kaylee McDonald.
Hello, I'm Hannah Wood. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I don't want to be repetitive to anything that has been said, so I'll just say a few things. I feel that, much like has been said, when people are asking for money, I would like to see more metrics of the success that they have had, which justifies them receiving more funds. I have lived here in Halifax since 2013, and currently the trials for 2 murder victims that I know are happening concurrently. There is, and I don't lead what is to be called a high-risk lifestyle in any way, and yet I know 2 people who have been murdered. in the last 5 years. So I really need to see, and I need it proved to me, just like any business asking for a loan or any student asking for a loan or any person at a bank asking for a loan, what exactly this $6 million will improve for crime enforcement, which is the main job of the police, and also crime solving. So we have a massive human trafficking problem in this city, and I know all of you know that. Stats came out recently that showed we are still one of the worst places in Canada for this problem. And when I talk to people who have lived here their entire lives, that problem was still happening here in the 80s. So what has happened to fix that? What has happened to control gang violence in this city? Drug trafficking, any number of things. All I have seen in the time I've been here is crime get worse while yearly police receive more of a budget. So I guess I would ask the commission to treat the police commissioners as I would like them to be treated, which are people who need to prove their value, as opposed to people whose value is just implicitly accepted. They really need to sell to you and sell to me and sell to everyone who pays taxes and those who don't, why this will make a difference and how exactly it will make a difference. And speaking as a person who pays taxes in this city, we can't afford to have weekly regular garbage pickup, but we can afford to give HRP $6 million and change. That's seems crazy to me that we do not even have some of the essential services that we need. We don't even own our own snowplows. And yet we can give $6 million and change more to the HRP. So there's obviously a lot of things that have been said, but I would just like to speak once again for the business argument that people asking for more money need to be proving what they're going to do with it and proving what they've done with past funds to show that that money will actually go where community members want it to go. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to call on Kaylee McDonald.
Hello, my name is Kaylee McDonald. I'm a lifelong resident of the HRM, and I am opposed to the budget increase to the police at this time. And I find it very interesting that we've heard from so many different people today, and every single person who has clearly stated their views on this have said that they were opposed or they had some sort of a mixed feelings about the review, but I have yet to see anybody who came up to say that they were in favor of the increase as it stands, which I think is probably indicative that our populace is not very pleased with the way that the policing system is run at this time. I would also like to state that I'm opposed to increase in police budgets at all times. I think that it is something that we should not be continuing to invest in, but I think that at this particular moment in time, it is especially egregious. What you're proposing at this moment is approximately a 7% increase in your budget when wages for people have stagnated. It's especially telling that the HRM said that the RCMP said that for every officer, it's approximately $180,000 per officer. Now, that isn't directly related to their salary, but I do think that that is quite a lot per officer acquired. I would also like to point out that it's especially frustrating that we're talking about giving more funding to the Halifax Regional Police, who is currently being led by Dan Kinsella, who in November, almost 96% of his own officers in the police union had a vote of no confidence for him, which I think is something that I find very frustrating, that he's continuing to be given this role of leadership when, you know, obviously there's a large amount of people in this room who don't even think that, you know, we should be giving money to the police. And it seems like the police officers themselves have a problem with the current system as it is in place. So those are kind of some of the concerns that I've heard. And in general, I just want to kind of reiterate what so many other people have said here, that there are other things that we could be spending our money on. And I am kind of appalled that we're continuing to have this discussion when the conversation that we had today is so similar to the conversation about funding increases for the police that was had last year and the year before. Thank you so much. I see the rest of my time.
Thank you. Call upon Mila McKay.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much. My name is Mila McKay. I go by they or she pronouns. I want to bring up one fact that has not really been touched on, and this is one thing that makes me very concerned about increases in budgets to the police department. On August 18th, during the eviction of unhoused people, the very violent eviction of unhoused people from the few years back from the library, old library grounds, there was a photo taken of one officer who has a special patch, like in addition to his uniform, that is a thin blue line Nova Scotia patch. This is not unheard of for police to have these kinds of symbols of allegiance to movements. Thin blue line, if you look it up, antihate.ca, I'm sure has written about it. A number of anti-hate organizations that study hate movements have described the thin blue line movement. It is a far-right extremist hate movement that specifically recruits police officers, as well as other members outside of the police force. How can we trust an institution that has such relationships within its organization? And these aren't new, all right? As previous speakers have mentioned, the institution of policing, even in Canada, all right, and I'm studying sociology, I'm in my final year. The institution of policing, even in Canada, has a long history with racism. One really good example is the barn burning incident that the RCMP committed in the 60s. That's when they planned to TNT a barn where a meeting of Black Panther Canada members was taking place. So there's a long history of very extreme violence from our policing institutions. And I think that should be deeply considered, especially since there really is not enough research or insight into how insidious this connection to far-right extremism is within these institutions. Again, we heard earlier about the violence against people of color within policing, against women within policing. These are things that have been studied. We know about them. And these are definitely correlated with far-right extremism. And so there are connections here. And I just feel like that should be deeply considered when we're considering funding these organizations. I do not want my tax dollars going to the paychecks and the intentions and goals of far-right extremists. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now called Pennies. I can't pronounce the last name.
Yeah, it's Khosrowshahi. Hi, my name is Pennies Khosrowshahi. I'm a resident of District 8. I'm also a lawyer. So I ask that council members think about what the chief of police means when they say hate crime, because that word was thrown around quite a few times without any clarity. I just want to clarify that hate crime is not actually a charge in the criminal code. You can't be charged with hate crime because, it's not in the criminal code. It could be advocating genocide, public incitement of hatred, willful promotion of hatred, mischief. And I'm saying this because we didn't get any clarity about that. These provisions that I also just outlined, they're not new. They've been in the criminal code for a long time. The presentation we had earlier in a way presents hate crimes as this pressing and recent phenomena, but using policing to address hate crimes is not new and innovative. And frankly, as folks have been presenting today, does not actually work. I'm concerned that HRP is using that as a buzzword because these topics related to discrimination and hate crime, they're hard to resist. Who would be for hate crime and discrimination? The issue, though, is the lack of transparency, as Kate McDonald also mentioned earlier, about what is considered hate crimes, its tactics when policing is considered, the success of those tactics. Hate against which communities exactly? Do we know that the police are best equipped to answer that? And another thing that I wanted to offer a different perspective on is body cameras. I mean, I'm sure that people have spoken about how they are not the best mechanism for accountability. But what I have seen when I provide legal support at public protests during political actions, for example, my experience with body cams is that they're seen, police uses that to record protesters. So when I've been helping people, my experience with body cams has been, oh, you're going to move now because I'm filming you, or, oh, you better stop talking to that arrestee when I'm trying to help them, or I'm going to arrest you for obstruction of justice. And my camera is on, I'm filming you. So it's kind of like turned against the people, not on the police. So I asked council to think critically when hate crime is presented as one of the biggest reasons for a budget increase without any clarity or definition of what that entails. And I also ask that you ask hard questions about what body cams also are supposed to accomplish and overall turn down the budget increase. Lastly, everyone has presented against the budget increase, and I was wondering why the police wouldn't pack the room to counter the anti-budget sentiments. And I think they probably don't think that they have to, because why bother? They think they're going to get their way despite the report of this own board suggesting that they shouldn't. And I really think that it would seriously challenge the credibility of this board if you allowed the budget increase despite the clear public message tonight. Another thing that they didn't write down, but I will try to get across. I usually don't go to consultations because I feel, kind of came with my friends, usually feel like you lose either way. If you go, they're not going to care. Yeah, they're not going to care. You're not going to get your way. If you don't go, they're going to say, well, you didn't come to consultation, so what do you expect? And but here I am, and I really hope that I change my view about consultations in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes the list of those who have signed up to present today, and I will offer the floor to anyone else who would like to present. If you'd like, perhaps you can come to the mic. I can't see everyone who may have put their hand up, so I'm just going to continue to ask until we run out.
Yeah, I'm going to be really quick.
We need your name and.
Oh, Dave
and
Wilson,
address,
I'm HRM resident.
Can you tell us where generally?
St. Margaret's Bay.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyway, I'm a fan of police, generally speaking, and I've always had my dealings have always worked out really well. One thing I will say, I've heard my eyes were open a fair bit tonight, and a lot of different opinions as to what's going on and whatever. I don't consider the police the bad guys. I think they're hardworking and dedicated individuals and professionals. And like it was pointed out one talk, there's the odd bad apple. It's going to happen. And it's how you fix that bad apple. That's really where the rubber hits the road. But on the budget increase, I think if they need the money, they should get it. But that would be up to you guys, however you want to handle that. And I commend you guys for doing what you're doing. You're getting an earful tonight, and most of it's very legitimate. So credit to all the speakers that have gotten up and spoken. Now I've said my piece. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chairman.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Can you come to the podium, please?
Good evening. Jeff Warnica from District 9. I suppose I won't try to compete with people's personal stories. Also being a white man of some means, my interactions with the police are nowhere near as severe as others. And you are, the commission is a policy organization. So I would ask you policy questions and expect you to ask of the police policy questions. The RCMP in particular, they made their presentations. They celebrated, for example, the success of patrolling a marina event on what is navigable waters. That is by definition a federal responsibility. It should not come from HRP or RCMP Nova Scotia money. So they should not be able to allow to celebrate that here. And they mentioned other things which are squarely provincial responsibilities. Their fingerprinting services, all of their enhanced policing services. Those services are paid for through the Department of Justice, the Nova Scotia Department of Justice. I'm not sure who they meant when they said Department of Justice. It's unclear because there is a federal department. So that is highly inappropriate to celebrate as something that they get for HRM money because they didn't. They have other bodies that are funded that fund those services. This will surprise many people, but I will agree with Chief Kinsella, his points last year. He made the point that a lot of the numbers for HRP officers, officer count, expense per capita are higher than would be indicated. Essentially, and I don't want to put words into his mouth, but essentially because the central police services of HRM are picking up the slack for the RCMP on radios and computers, detectives and such. So the RCMP budget in particular is suspect and should be investigated probably on a forensic level, simply not providing the services that they are being paid for. So I would look into that. And it is on the HRP status, it is somewhat ironic that they're asking for mental health support. I'm deeply concerned about the mental health of people who have guns. But I would suggest that simply throwing more money at that. I'm also concerned about the cadets and the potential recruits. And if nothing changes, then you're simply going to have more people with guns in uniform who have the same mental health issues, that have the same leadership, the same policies, the same practices. And there's been no suggestion of changing really anything. It's just more bodies doing the same thing. And to, repeat the quote, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Throwing more of the same people at the problem, whatever that problem is, will change nothing. So thank you. That's my submission.
Thank you. I believe there was another speaker around the poll. If you have an interest, it would be helpful to me if you have an interest and if you have the ability to perhaps queue up a little bit, because I can't, especially if you're down on that end. I don't, is there a second?
Yeah, I've
No.
already spoken. I was just going to clarify that my name's Collins Ellison and I'm from District 8.
Thank you for doing that, Collins. I missed asking you. Here we are. Okay.
I would just like to make a.
Can we have your name and
Yes.
general location?
My name is Moorvale. My general location is Quinpool District. I would just like to make a.
Sorry, I couldn't understand that last.
Quinpool District.
What?
Quinpool.
Quinpool, sorry. Thank you.
Quinpool District. I would just like to make a clarifying point, speaking to a couple of comments around a couple of bad apples in the police force. I would like to say that there are numerous studies suggesting that 20 to 40% of police officers are domestic abusers, and I would not qualify that as a couple of bad apples.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Are there any further speakers? Third and final time. Are there any further speakers? Hearing none, we will come. No, there's no ability to speak twice. And is there? Okay, seeing and hearing none at the mic, that concludes our public presentations tonight. Our last agenda item is discussion and vote on Halifax Regional Police 2023-24 proposed budget operations. And I ask what the will of the commission is. Commissioner Critchley.
Thank you, Chair Kent. So as I already indicated already, I think it's obvious given the time, the board needs fulsome opportunity to deliberate. I'm going to bring a motion from the floor, look to my fellow commissioners for the 2/3 support needed for a motion from the floor. No, I see John Trace. Simple majority, even better. Thank you. But I guess what the motion that I'm going to bring is to defer this motion, but also to move that at the meeting to follow where the deliberation occur, that meeting occur virtually, and that there be a further opportunity for public consultation as needed and as requested at that virtual meeting. So is that required 2/3? Is that because it's more substantive, or no? Even better. Majority vote.
Need a seconder on that?
Secondary question.
And a question before we.
Sorry, in a comment. I should say.
So you are seconding the motion and now speaking on it. Commissioner Critchley, do you have anything more to add? I just want to give you that.
No, I'm happy to answer any questions of clarification from commissioners.
Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Just a clarification on that. So if the motion that we have on the floor is to defer this discussion for future meeting virtually, and then for public consultation aspects, so that are we then saying that we will extend the public consultation aspect of it as well and give people an opportunity to speak again at that meeting? Is that what we're in front of us?
That would be my respectful request. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I was going to ask John if there's any issue with that.
In terms of fairness, I would suggest that it wouldn't be an opportunity to speak again so much as an opportunity, those who were not here tonight, is what I heard.
Thank you. So just to be clear for the clerk, do you need the piece on the public presentation within the motion, or is that something that we would do around agenda review?
I have no concerns with it being in the motion, especially because that would put it on to the
Yeah.
minutes. I just would like to confirm we do have an agenda review meeting tomorrow, which would be where we would look at the actual schematics of when and where. There are a number of people scheduled that have to be coordinated to bring to an additional meeting, so we need that time to be able to find those out for that meeting tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Any further considerations, debate, or questions on the motion? Hearing none, can we have a call for question?
Question, please.
Question's been called. All in favor? Those against? There are none, so motion is carried. So that concludes the agenda items. We need a call for adjournment.
Can I make a notice of motion for the subsequent virtual meeting?
No, it's not on the agenda. We didn't.
Okay.
This is a
no.
special, I think this was because it's a special meeting. There was specific details, agenda. Ian, I see a look on your face that I don't want to leave. Yeah,
Okay, that's fine. I will provide a motion in writing in
Thank you.
advance of, probably not in advance of budget review, but I'll provide notice now and provide the motion ahead of the meeting. Thank you.
and I have a mover to adjourn. So moved by Commissioner Gavin. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. It's been a warm room. I don't know about you. I felt it was warm and I was. Thank you so much.